The brain eater was very fast, but it was much slower than Lin Yi. Even if Lin Yi escaped on the ground and it flew in the sky, it could only hang on. It was not easy to close the distance. This guy's speed isn't slow. Lin Yi looked back at the brain-eating insect in the sky. Although he said so, his expression was relaxed. Not to mention anything else, at least in terms of speed, he had absolute confidence. As long as he wanted to, he could get rid of the opponent in minutes because he was only using the super butterfly subtle steps at the moment. There was still the super extreme butterfly subtle steps that he hadn't used yet. For Lin Yi, it was not a good thing to get rid of the opponent too early because it was likely to transfer the danger to Cold and the others. Anyway, he had enough confidence to escape. Hanging on to the brain-eating insect like this was the best choice. However, this was not without any risk. With the strength that the brain-eating insect had just shown, Lin Yi was not willing to fight it at close range, even if he was beaten to death. If he was not careful, he would either die or be injured. If he attracted some powerful spirit beasts during his escape, the consequences would be hard to predict. While Lin Yi was planning, the brain-eating insect was also planning. It was not stupid. In fact, it had already seen through Lin Yi's intention. It knew that Lin Yi still had some strength left and could speed up to get rid of it at any time, but it still had absolute confidence. As far as it knew, any human practitioner had a limited amount of qi. Running for his life like this would consume a lot of his qi, and by the time he ran out of it, he'd be at the end of his rope, completely at its mercy. Moreover, it had a secret weapon. It was not afraid that Lin Yi would really escape from its palm. No matter how far Lin Yi escaped, it would be useless. It would always be able to grasp the opponent's position. One man and one beast continued like this for the whole night. Seeing that the sky was bright, the brain-eating insect finally felt that something was wrong. It could not help but mutter, "What's wrong with this human? Where did he get so much true energy?" It would never have thought that Lin Yi had a cheating device like the Jade Pendant Space. If it was purely a battle of consumption, he would naturally be in an invincible position. Just like now, Lin Yi was still alive and kicking. On the contrary, the brain-eating insect was a little overwhelmed. No matter how strong it was, it could not withstand a whole night of relentless pursuit. At this moment, Lin Yi's speed suddenly increased a lot. In the blink of an eye, he escaped out of the brain-eating insect's perception range. He's finally starting to use his true energy to escape. It seems that this human's true energy is almost consumed. The brain-eating insect was not surprised. Instead, it smiled proudly. "No matter how fast you run, you won't be able to escape from my traces." Traces was the innate ability of the thousand-eyed wolf spider. Now, it had also become one of the abilities of the brain-eating insect. As long as it left a trace of undetectable spider silk on the other party, then no matter where the other party escaped, it would not be able to escape its pursuit. This spider silk was extremely thin. Not only was it invisible to the naked eye, but it was also difficult to distinguish it with divine sense. Previously, when Lin Yi deliberately delayed talking, the brain-eating insect was so cooperative because it wanted to beat him at his own game and leave a spider silk on Lin Yi. As the brain-eating insect said, it was very picky about its food. Once it targeted someone, it would definitely die. This was because it would use all kinds of methods, and it was impossible to guard against it. To be precise, it was impossible to guard against it at all. Lin Yi really did not notice the spider silk on his body. After all, this thing was too thin and too light. Even with his divine sense, it was difficult to detect it. Unless he had taken precautions and carried out a comprehensive and specialized inspection, even an immortal would fall for it. With such a brilliant tracking method, the brain-eating insect was naturally sitting on a fishing platform. No matter how fast and far Lin Yi escaped, in front of its traces, it would be a futile struggle. Chapter 52:36. However, at this moment, there was a sudden change. Lin Yi's trace suddenly disappeared from its mind without any warning. The brain-eating bug was stunned for a long time and could not say a word for a long time. It was still complacent that everything was under control. Wasn't this a slap in the face? After a long time, the brain-eating bug finally became angry. This cunning human Could it be that he had discovered my tracks from the very beginning and had been acting in order to numb my senses? Damn bastard. Little did it know that Lin Yi did not know any traces at all. He just wanted to ensure that he could completely shake off the other party. So he completely transformed from the primordial spirit form to the primordial spirit form. No matter how clever the traces were, they still needed to be attached to a physical body to be effective. When Lin Yi transformed into the primordial spirit form, the spider silk had no place to attach, so it naturally lost its meaning. This was purely a coincidence. Fortunately, Lin Yi did not stop practicing for the past few months and mastered the switching between the primordial spirit form, the semi-primordial spirit form, and the primordial spirit form. Otherwise, he would have suffered a big loss unknowingly. After carefully confirming several times that the brain-eating bug did not catch up, Lin Yi finally returned to the primordial spirit form and returned to the ground. Although it was not impossible to maintain the primordial spirit form, after all, this state could be immune to most of the damage. However, once there was a special emergency, this state was also very fragile and could be said to have no defense. In this ancient trial ground with all kinds of dangers, the primordial spirit form was no different from a small boat drifting in the sea. Any huge wave could be a disaster. In contrast, the primordial spirit form was more likely to be injured, but at least he could use all kinds of trump cards. More importantly, Lin Yi was more used to this form that was close to his original body. Otherwise, he would always feel weird if he kept transforming into a primordial spirit and floating in the sky. After returning to the ground, the first thing Lin Yi did was to find Cold and the rest. After all, they were still too weak. It would be fine if they were only facing a Foundation Establishment stage threat, but if they encountered a Golden Core stage spirit beast, the consequences were simply unimaginable. If this dragged on, Lin Yi really could not rest assured. However, it was not easy to find Cold and the rest at this time. They had escaped for the whole night with the Super Butterfly Microstep. Even if they were not completely in the opposite direction, the distance was definitely not a little bit. It was at least hundreds of miles away. In this vast ancient trial ground, it was easier said than done to find someone from such a far distance. It would be better if they were in a plain area with a clear view. At worst, they could just change into their primordial spirit form and float around in the sky. It would not be that difficult to find traces of Cold and the others. However, there were primeval forests everywhere. They could not even see the situation under their feet when they were floating in the air, let alone looking into the distance. Especially since this place was similar to the previous trial ground, the divine sense could not be expanded too far. The only way Lin Yi could use now was to determine the route of Cold and the rest, then rush to the front of the crowd at the fastest speed. At the same time, he maintained the largest range of divine sense perception to avoid any mistakes. This way, he would have a chance to meet with the rest in a short period of time. Lin Yi's speed was extremely fast. Even if he encountered a spirit beast along the way, there was no delay. After all, even the brain-eating worm could not catch up with his speed, let alone these ordinary spirit beasts. They wanted to block the way, but unfortunately, Lin Yi did not care about them at all. He directly rushed past them. They could only look at him in the dust. What could they do? After an hour, Lin Yi suddenly stopped. It was not a problem with his vital energy or physical strength, but because there were traces of humans in his divine sense perception. This position was unlikely to be Cold and the rest, but Lin Yi still wanted to find out the specific situation. He did not mind helping the disciples of the Archaic Alliance along the way. He might even meet some familiar faces. Lin Yi frowned slightly. This place was not on the periphery of any main road. It was already deep in the jungle. He could vaguely find a series of footprints of human cultivators on the ground. However, this series of footprints stopped abruptly after reaching an open space. Lin Yi took a look at the surrounding environment. At first glance, it looked ordinary. There was nothing special, and there was no dangerous aura. There was even no trace of the activities of spirit beasts, which were very common in other places. The environment revealed a fresh and pleasant smell. It was completely a place like a paradise. More importantly, there were no human cultivators in the range of Lin Yi's divine sense perception. In other words, a person disappeared into thin air after coming here. Logically, unless this person could fly. Otherwise, no matter how strong he was, he would inevitably leave some traces. It was the same even if he climbed up the tree. The scene in front of him was a little inexplicable. He could not say that he could transform into the form of the primordial spirit like Lin Yi, right? Lin Yi could not figure out the reason at the moment, but he was sure that there must be something wrong with this environment. It was just that he did not know where the problem was. Chapter 52:37. The man-eating flowers bite mist, but the crisis was not over. Just as Lin Yi dodged it, another man-eating flower appeared less than 3 steps away from him. It was identical in size and shape. This time, Lin Yi could not dodge in time. He felt his vision darken and a thought flashed through his mind. Flower blooms on the same stalk. Vermilion redbud. Vermilion redbud was the name of a flower. From the appearance of these two man-eating flowers, they were indeed the vermilion redbud that was commonly seen in the secular world. However, the vermilion redbud in the secular world was not as ferocious and terrifying as the man-eating flowers. Instead, it was purely an ornamental flower. If Lin Yi had realized that it was a vermilion redbud, he would not have fallen for it so easily. This was because the vermilion redbud had a more official name, the twin flower. As the saying goes, when a flower blooms on a single stalk, the twin stalk flower would always grow in opposite directions and would never exist alone. Since this man-eating flower had the same characteristics as the twin stalk flower, it was only natural that it would grow in opposite directions. When he saw one, he had to be prepared to defend against two. Unfortunately, Lin Yi realized this a little too late. Just as he was about to be bitten by the bingdi flower, Lin Yi suddenly had a flash of inspiration, and he immediately gave up on the idea of turning into his soul form and running for his life. Instead, he jumped right into the creature's mouth. He wanted to see just what kind of existence this bingdi flower was. Those sharp teeth did not harm a single hair on Lin Yi's body. In the pitch-black darkness, he felt as if he had entered a tunnel and was quickly transported to the depths of the ground. After a while, his surroundings suddenly became clear. There was even some light. Even without using his divine sense, he could clearly see his surroundings. At first glance, it looked like a tree hole with a diameter of less than 10 meters. However, it was not an ordinary tree hole. Instead, it was an extremely active tree hole. There were countless green tentacles extending from the walls of the hole. Any one of them could entangle a person and cause them to be unable to move. There were 4 tentacles wrapped around Lin Yi's body, and not only were these green tentacles tight, but there were also sharp needles on their tips that made his scalp numb. Surprisingly, a drop of dark green liquid was coming out of the tip. It seemed that it was going to be injected into Lin Yi's body. This time, Lin Yi did not dare to let his guard down. It was fine if it was only a little strangulation, but if this unknown dangerous juice was injected into his body, who knew what the consequences would be? There was no need to struggle or waste any energy. Lin Yi's method of breaking free from the 4 green tentacles was very simple. He transformed into his primordial spirit, and they all instantly fell to nothing. After realizing that he had missed his target, not only these 4 green tentacles, but all the other tentacles in the tree hole also went crazy, frantically searching for traces of Lin Yi. Unfortunately, Lin Yi was now a ball of primordial spirit, so no matter how hard they tried, it was all in vain. These tentacles did not go crazy for too long. After confirming that Lin Yi was not in the cave, they quickly calmed down, even though Lin Yi appeared in the form of a nascent soul again. They didn't react at all, completely treating Lin Yi as air. Lin Yi was not surprised by this. By now, he had basically understood. Although this bingdi man-eating flower had the tendency to become a plant spirit, it was still a far cry from the real spirit that he had seen in the past. For example, the half-moon lake at the back mountain of the North Island in Heavenstep. Not only was there a huge difference in level, but even the degree of evolution was the same. The half-moon lake had a completely independent individual consciousness. Furthermore, there were other advanced techniques that were similar to divine sense. However, this bingdi man-eating flower didn't have any. It seemed to be acting on its own instincts. After avoiding its instinctive ability to distinguish between friend and foe, it was completely blind. However, What made Linny puzzled was why an existence like this, whose evolution was far from complete, would deliberately leave him alive just now. Could it be that it was the same as the other spirit beasts and needed to be left alive to offer tribute to that lord? Logically speaking, the biggest instinct of the Bingdi man-eating flower was to hunt. When a prey like Linny fell into its mouth, it would definitely bite him into pieces. This way, it would be easier to digest and absorb him. However, when Linny fell into its mouth just now, those dangerous and ferocious teeth surprisingly chose to restrain themselves and sent him into the cave unscathed. If that wasn't the case, Linny wouldn't have suddenly changed his mind and walked into the trap. He just wanted to see what kind of background this Bingdi man-eating flower had. Linny looked around. At this moment, he suddenly heard a faint shout from below. At first, it sounded rather familiar. When the voice was heard again, Linny immediately reacted. Fei Yangsheng. It turned out that the series of footprints he saw previously belonged to Fei Yangsheng. This guy was really unlucky to actually fall into the mouth of the Bingdi man-eating flower. To Linny, although Fei Yangsheng wasn't really one of his people, he was more or less related to him. Since he had encountered Fei Yangsheng, he naturally wouldn't leave him in the lurch. He immediately transformed into his primordial spirit and went down. As expected, there was also a sealed tree hole below, and Fei Yangsheng was tied up in the middle by a bunch of green tentacles. Seeing this, Linny smiled. He immediately condensed his primordial spirit and appeared in front of him. Fei Yangsheng only felt his vision blur. At first, he didn't dare to believe it. However, he immediately reacted and instantly exclaimed, Senior Lin, you were also trapped? Hee hee, you can say that. Linny smiled non-committally. That's not right. Why aren't you tied up by these things? Fei Yangsheng looked at Lin Yi's relaxed expression in disbelief. From the looks of it, Linny wasn't trapped at all. He was obviously here for sightseeing. Oh, because they are reasonable. Linny casually made up a story. I'm already in this situation. Senior Lin, please don't tease me. Fei Yangsheng smiled bitterly. I'm not teasing you. Can't you see that they are ignoring me? Linny curled his lips and then asked, By the way, how did you get caught here? This place isn't on the main road at all. With your strength, how did you get the courage to wander in the dense forest alone? Fei Yangsheng's strength was only at the peak of the middle stage of the foundation building realm. Even among the experts of the same level, he was far from outstanding. It was thanks to Linny that he was able to obtain the qualification to participate in the primordial trial this time. If he wandered into the dense forest alone with his strength, he would definitely die without a burial place in minutes. Chapter 52-38. Escape? Linny was slightly taken aback. Yes, we encountered a giant one-eyed bear along the way. Its strength was at least in the middle stage of the Golden Core realm. That guy was extremely ferocious. Even Duanmu was sent flying by its slap, not to mention the rest of us. Most of us were captured alive by it. Thanks to my quick reflexes, I escaped into the dense forest and barely escaped. In the end, before I could rejoice, I became like this, Fei Yangsheng said dejectedly. You mean Duanmu is dead? Linny raised his eyebrows. He had a rather deep impression of Duanmu, and his impression of her was not bad. It would be quite a pity if she died just like that. That shouldn't be the case. After she was sent flying by the giant one-eyed bear, she didn't appear again. In my opinion, she was definitely injured, but not to the point of death. After all, she was one of the strongest cultivators in the Foundation establishment realm. Fei Yangsheng shook his head. That's not too bad, Linny nodded. Sigh, if I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have been blinded by greed and chose to follow Duanmu. It would have been much better if I had followed Senior Lin. At the very least, I wouldn't have ended up like this. Fei Yangsheng sighed with a look of regret. Hee hee, you think too much. Linny laughed and shook his head. You only encountered a giant one-eyed bear in the middle stage of the Golden Core realm. I encountered the primordial Gomon King and the red-scaled snake, both of which were powerful spirit beasts in the late stage of the Golden Core realm. After that, I encountered countless spirit beasts of all sizes, and I even encountered an unfathomable brain-eating worm. According to my speculation, It was at least an invincible existence in the Golden Core realm. Do you think you would have a good ending by following me? So ferocious. Fei Yangsheng was dumbfounded. Compared to what Linny said, the giant one-eyed bear was simply an obedient baby. Fei Yangsheng was nothing. Otherwise, why would you see me here? Linny asked with his lips curled. Oh, that's true. Fei Yangsheng smiled sheepishly. Now that even Linny had fallen to such a state, there was no need to mention the others who followed him. Fortunately, he had chosen Duamu Yu's path. In comparison, the difficulty was relatively easy. Otherwise, if he really followed Lin Yi, it would be a complete nightmare. As the two of them spoke, the surrounding green tentacles bound Fei Yangsheng tighter and tighter. One of the tentacles was especially thick, and its sharp needle, dripping with dark green liquid, was about to stab into Fei Yangsheng's body. Fei Yangsheng was so scared that he almost wet his pants. He quickly shouted, "Senior Lin, save me!" Before he finished speaking, Linny had already made his move. A beam of 5 elements murderous chi with a low dragon roar met the tentacle head-on. The tentacle immediately broke without any suspense, and Fei Yangsheng finally escaped death. However, before he could breathe a sigh of relief, the numerous green tentacles around him all went crazy. As if they had poked a hornet's nest, all the tentacles began to attack wildly. What made Fei Yangsheng want to cry was that these tentacles only targeted him from the beginning to the end. Lin Yi, who was standing in front of him, was not affected at all. It was as if he was treated as air. The Bingdi man-eating flower could not sense the existence of Lin Yi at all. What's going on? Fei Yangsheng was on the verge of tears. With his meager strength, how could he withstand the crazy attacks of so many tentacles? Moreover, he was tied up tightly at the moment. He didn't even have the chance to dodge, let alone counterattack. Of course, Lin Yi would not leave Fei Yangsheng to die. He immediately attacked with several beams of 5 elements murderous chi and cut off the green tentacles that bound Fei Yangsheng. Although this could not completely solve Fei Yangsheng's predicament, at least it gave him a chance to struggle and save himself. Fei Yangsheng was like a drowning man grasping at the last life-saving straw. He couldn't care less about the residual injuries in his body and hurriedly began to dodge with all his strength. He wanted to avoid being hit as much as he could. As for counterattacking, it was simply a fantasy to him, and he didn't even need to think about it. A person's potential was limitless. The strength that Fei Yangsheng displayed at this moment was far beyond his realm. Unfortunately, even so, he could only struggle for a little longer. If this continued, he would still die of exhaustion. Senior Lin, save me. Fei Yangsheng could only beg for help with a bitter face. He had no choice. He had to beg for help, or he would die. However, this time, Linny did not pay attention to him. Instead, he stood at the side thoughtfully and watched the show. This time, Fei Yangsheng really cried. He was busy dodging, otherwise, he would really kneel in front of Lin Yi. In a short period of time, Fei Yangsheng had already suffered 4 or 5 hits. Although he was lucky to avoid being hit in the vital parts every time, his skin and flesh were still torn, and he was seriously injured. If these hits continued, he would really be dead. Fortunately, Lin Yi did not give up on him completely. Just when Fei Yangsheng was about to collapse, Lin Yi suddenly used the frenzied fire fist. A terrifying heat immediately surged. Seeing this, Fei Yangsheng's eyes lit up. Although he did not know how the Bingdi man-eating flower became a spirit, he was sure that fire was definitely the natural enemy of plants. However, Fei Yangsheng found that Lin Yi's frenzied fire fist was directly aimed at his face. He was so frightened that he hurriedly shouted, "Wrong, wrong. Senior Lin, don't hit me." Lin Yi did not pay attention to him. The frenzied fire fist directly landed on Fei Yangsheng's body. As for the green tentacles that were attacking him crazily, they retreated to the side. It seemed that they were really afraid of fire. After a while, Fei Yangsheng finally recovered. He spat out a mouthful of black smoke. His whole body was charred black, and he staggered to his feet. As soon as he saw Lin Yi, he hurriedly hid, afraid that Lin Yi would punch him again. The Bingdi man-eating flower did not kill him. Instead, he died in the hands of Lin Yi. How wronged. Why are you hiding? Linny looked at him with amusement. Ah. Fei Yongsheng did not react immediately. He was about to kneel down and beg for mercy. In his current state, if Linny wanted to kill him, it would be a piece of cake. He did not even need to move his finger. Linny just had to stand by and watch, and Fei Yongsheng would be dead for sure. Don't you understand? Look around you. Lin Yi advised. Fei Yongsheng was confused. When he heard this, he subconsciously looked behind him and was suddenly stunned. This was because he realized that the green tentacles that were attacking him crazily just now were not moving at all. They did not have any intention of attacking him. Chapter 52:39. It's simple. I cracked its prey recognition mechanism. Linny smiled. Prey identification mechanism? Fei Yongsheng didn't quite understand. That's right. I discovered it just now. Do you know why the tentacles only attacked you and not me when we are both here? Linny asked. Isn't it because they are reasonable? Fei Yongsheng said weakly. You really believe it? Linny looked at him as if he was looking at a rare animal. Fei Yongsheng was speechless. He didn't believe such nonsense at first, but he couldn't think of any other explanation. There is only one real reason. You are stained with the unique juice of the Bingdi man-eating flower, but I don't have it on me. Lin Yi revealed the answer. The juice of the Bingdi man-eating flower? Fei Yongsheng was stunned for a moment before he realized that his body was indeed sticky. He must have been stained from the beginning. However, he was in a dangerous situation that he had never been in before since he was swallowed. He was worried about his own life, so how could he be in the mood to pay attention to such trivial things? That's right. This juice is how it identifies its prey. As long as you are stained with the juice, you are its prey. It will use all means to deal with you. However, if you are not stained with the juice, you are like air to it. It will turn a blind eye to you, just like how it treated me just now. Linny explained. He didn't understand this problem at first. It was only after he compared the difference between himself and Fei Yongsheng that he realized that he had gotten rid of all the foreign objects attached to him after he transformed into his primordial spirit form. Of course, Fei Yongsheng couldn't use this method, so he could only rely on the scorching flames of the frenzy fist to dry himself. Fei Yongsheng took a long time to understand. He looked at his charred body and shook his head with a bitter smile. You didn't have to use this method, did you? I was almost scared to death. This was the truth. Even if he wasn't scared to death, he was scared to the point of peeing his pants. He was just dried by the frenzied fire fist. Hee, how else could I get you out of danger? Linny smiled. That's true. Thank you for saving my life, Senior Lin. Fei Yongsheng hurriedly expressed his gratitude. Although he was in a sorry state, it was better than losing his life. You're welcome. It was nothing. Lin Yi waved his hand indifferently. No matter what, Fei Yongsheng had done some things for him in the past. Even if he had not made any contributions, he had worked hard. It would be unreasonable for him not to help in this situation. Fei Yongsheng took a long time to recover. His injuries were not light to begin with, and he had no choice but to endure the frenzied fist. Even if it was not at its full power, a layer of his skin had been burned off. This suffering was not easy to endure. Senior Lin, how are we going to get out? Fei Yongsheng asked anxiously. Even though the Bingdi man-eating flower no longer treated him as prey and the green tentacles around him were no longer threatening him, it was still not a good idea to be trapped in this place forever. In the end, he still had to think of a way to get out. It's very convenient for me to get out, but it's a little troublesome for you. Linny looked at him and said, if it was Linny himself, he would only need to transform into his primordial spirit form, and he would be able to get out unimpeded. But now that there was an additional Fei Yongsheng, he could not just leave him here. How troublesome. Senior, if you need anything, just tell me. I promise I won't hesitate even if I have to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a pot of boiling oil. Fei Yongsheng hurriedly patted his chest and said, he was afraid that Lin Yi would leave him this burden. There's nothing to tell you. All right, you can hide in the corner, lest I accidentally injure you. As Lin Yi spoke, a true chi pill firebomb suddenly appeared in his hand. After Fei Yongsheng had rolled and crawled to the furthest corner, Lin Yi immediately pressed it under his feet. In his opinion, since this tree hole was a part of the Bingdi man-eating flower, even if he could not directly blow up a hole, he would still be able to find another way. Boom. The power of the pure chi pill fire bomb wasn't at its limit, but it was more than enough to blow up a place like this. The result was out of Lin Yi's expectations. The tree hole was destroyed, but there wasn't the exit he'd expected. It was pitch black everywhere, and the only thing visible was a bottomless hole at the bottom. Senior Lin, where is this? Fei Yangxing hurriedly asked. I don't know either. Lin Yi shook his head. He had already used his divine sense to explore a radius of several miles. The result was only one discovery. This was a very deep underground. Even Lin Yi could not figure out where this place was. Fei Yangsheng was even more confused. He could only continue to ask anxiously, what should we do? There are two ways. The conservative one is to dig a hole while climbing up. Sooner or later, we will be able to return to the surface. Lin Yi casually said. This was an out-and-out stupid method, but it would not be wrong. At most, it would take a little more time and energy. Why not be conservative? Fei Yangxing asked. Do you see the hole below? Let's go down and explore. Lin Yi said. Let's not do this. This hole makes me feel scared. Senior Lin, why don't we go up and dig a hole to get out? Fei Yangsheng suggested. I am a little curious about this deep hole. Since you want to dig a hole to get out, then let's say goodbye. Lin Yi said. He pretended to jump into the hole. Although the immediate priority was to meet with Long Long and others, Lin Yi always felt that there was a mysterious and unfathomable strange aura below. He would not feel at ease if he did not explore it. Don't. I will go too. Senior, wherever you go, I will go. Fei Yangxing hurriedly said. He did not dare to act alone even if he was beaten to death. It was rare to meet such a thick thigh like Lin Yi. If he did not know to cling to it, then he would be a fool. Maybe there is some great danger hidden below. Just think about it. Lin Yi smiled noncommittally. He immediately jumped into the hole without saying anything. Fei Yangxing hesitated for a moment, but then he gritted his teeth and jumped down. If I die, I die. The two fell down in the darkness. Fortunately, the hole was not wide. As long as they stretched their arms and legs slightly, they could touch the wall of the hole. In this way, they could control the speed of their fall and avoid the impact when they landed too fast. After a while, Lin Yi suddenly reminded, it seems to be the bottom. Be careful. Chapter 52:40. Soon, Lin Yi calmly landed on the ground with Fei Yangsheng following closely behind. Both of them were stunned by the scene in front of them. There was actually such a garden so deep underground. This was not only unimaginable, it had completely subverted Lin Yi's view of the world. Didn't all these beautiful flowers need sunlight? Senior, we seem to have discovered an extraordinary place. Fei Yangsheng suddenly became excited. His focus was completely different from Lin Yi's. He discovered that there were many extremely precious spiritual herbs among the surrounding flowers. Any one of them would be invaluable in the market of the primordial underworld. Indeed. Lin Yi nodded slightly. These spiritual herbs were nothing to him. After all, his spiritual herb reserve was started on the Heaven Stage Island. Many of the spiritual herbs he collected were rare even on the Heaven Stage Island. Even so, it was undeniable that this place was not simple. After a few days of exploration, Lin Yi had a general understanding of the ancient training grounds. Although the density of the qi wasn't too bad, it might be because of the dense distribution of spirit beasts, so it was hard to find many elixirs outside. Rare elixirs were even rarer. Rare elixirs like the one in front of him right now was probably the only shop in the entire ancient training grounds that had such rare elixirs. There was no other shop in the entire ancient training grounds that had such rare elixirs. However, why was there such a magical place underground? Ignoring his own injuries, Fei Yangming hastily began to frantically pick all kinds of rare spirit herbs in the surroundings. He didn't care about the others. To him, spirit herbs represented a large amount of spirit jades. Nothing in the world was more important than spirit jades. Wait, Lin Yi suddenly stopped him. What's wrong? Fei Yangxing's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He thought that Lin Yi wanted to fight with him for these rare spiritual herbs. He quickly said with a bitter face, "Senior, there are so many rare spiritual herbs here. It's impossible for the two of us to pick them all. Even if you eat them all, you won't be able to take them away. Why don't you let me have a share?" Eating alone? Linny smiled when he heard that. He pointed at the thing in his hand and said, "Take a good look at what you've picked first. Isn't this the legendary scarlet flame fruit? It's worth quite a lot of money in the ancient martial world. It's worth at least 10 pieces of spiritual jade." Fei Yangsheng said happily. Given the rarity of spiritual jades in the primordial underworld, 10 spiritual jades were already a huge sum of money. "Open your eyes wide and look carefully. Are you sure this is a scarlet flame fruit?" Linny rolled his eyes at him. Fei Yangsheng carefully observed it again. Only then did he realize that although the fruit in his hand looked exactly the same as the scarlet flame fruit at first glance, it had an additional fine grain that wasn't obvious. He couldn't help but be stunned. Could it be a variant of the scarlet flame fruit? A variant? Linny shook his head and laughed. He walked over, snatched the fruit, and threw it away. Fei Yangsheng panicked. Even if it wasn't a scarlet flame fruit, he couldn't just throw it away like that. In the end, before he could even complain, he heard a loud explosion from the fruit, and the surrounding area was instantly razed to the ground. Fei Yangsheng was instantly dumbfounded. He only came back to his senses after a while and stammered, "How? How did this happen?" Remember, this is an explosive flame fruit. It will explode when it's fully ripe. If you let it explode, even if you bump it a little, its power is more than enough to deal with a peak foundation building middle-stage cultivator like you. Linny pursed his lips. I didn't know that this thing is so dangerous. Senior, you saved my life again." Fei Yangsheng quickly apologized with an embarrassed smile. He said fawningly, "Senior, you're really knowledgeable. Luckily I followed you here. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know how I died if I were as blind as you. Be careful. Otherwise, no matter how good the spiritual medicine is, you won't be able to take it even if you pick it." Linny reminded him, but he secretly kept an eye on him. This place was really strange. Unlike the well-known scarlet flame fruit, the exploding flame fruit was an extremely unpopular and rare elixir. Due to its extremely unstable nature, it was very difficult for it to grow naturally. It was already not bad to see one or two. However, with a glance, there were at least 18 exploding flame fruits in the surrounding mysterious garden. For the exploding flame fruit, this density had far exceeded the range of natural growth. There was only one possibility. These explosive flame fruits were planted by humans. But why would there be humans here? This was the thing that Linny was most curious about. Therefore, he did not hesitate to detonate the explosive flame fruit. He wanted to alert the enemy. In the end, there was no reaction at all. Fei Yangsheng was still collecting the spiritual medicine in high spirits. However, his movements were much more careful than before. He checked every spiritual medicine carefully again and again before he dared to pick it. He was afraid that he would encounter a dangerous spiritual medicine like the explosive flame fruit again. It would be too unjust to die to such a thing. Lin Yi did not stay idle either. Occasionally, he would find rare spiritual medicines like the explosive flame fruit. He would also put them into the space in the jade pendant. However, he was more concerned about the secret of this mysterious garden. This place wasn't too big, but it wasn't too small either. It was at least 10 miles in circumference, and Linny was sure that he'd be able to find some clues as to what was going on. What was the connection between this place and the twin piranha flower? Not long after, Fei Yangsheng's bag of various spiritual medicines was filled to the brim. He would not be able to take any more. He could only look at the spiritual medicines on the ground with a pained expression and sigh. Sigh, there are so many rare spiritual medicines, but I can't pick them. What a pity. If this wasn't a primeval smelting ground that only appeared once in 1,000 years, he would absolutely gather all the spirit herbs that could be gathered before him, not leaving a single one behind. After all, those were a large amount of spirit jades. I advise you to stop before you go too far. Are you sure you can take such a big bag of spiritual medicines? Linny looked at him doubtfully. Chapter 52:41. I'll take it with me even if I have to die. Fei Yangsheng looked determined. His heart was bleeding from the pain. If he couldn't even bring a bag of elixirs back, he would regret it for the rest of his life. Suit yourself. Linny didn't bother to persuade Fei Yangsheng anymore. If it was cold and the others, he wouldn't have said anything and kept them in the jade pendant space. He could just refine them into elixirs and distribute them later. Unfortunately, Fei Yangsheng was doing his best to remind Fei Yangsheng. After all, Fei Yangsheng was far from being one of them. Fei Yangsheng couldn't help but feel nervous when he saw Lin Yi's expression. He asked cautiously, "Senior, you won't leave me here, right? What do you think?" Lin Yi looked at him with a faint smile. Strictly speaking, saving his life just now was very kind considering their relationship. If Fei Yangsheng really became a burden, any normal person wouldn't protect him anymore. Lin Yi was no exception. Ugh! Fei Yangsheng looked at the bag of elixirs, troubled. Naturally, he knew that Lin Yi wouldn't leave him to fend for himself, but he wouldn't waste too much energy on him either. He wouldn't take any risks for him, and he'd have to make sure he had the ability to escape if anything happened, or he'd die. However, he couldn't throw away so many rare elixirs, could he? Fei Yangsheng struggled for a long time. Finally, he gritted his teeth and poured out the whole bag of rare elixirs. This guy has some courage. Lin Yi looked at him in a new light. At Fei Yangsheng's level, pouring out such a big bag of rare elixirs was no different than an ordinary person in the secular world giving up a big prize of hundreds of millions. It required a lot of courage and awareness, which was quite rare. Before Lin Yi could even praise him, Fei Yangsheng took out a small pouch from his pocket and picked out the most valuable herbs. He didn't give up on the rest of the herbs either, putting them back in the big pouch he'd brought with him. Lin Yi was speechless. He had already seen through this guy's plan. There was a saying that people would die for wealth, and birds would die for food. It was indeed true. "Senior, do you mind?" Fei Yangsheng smiled apologetically. His plan was very simple. If there was no particularly dangerous accident, he would carry all of them back. If the situation was critical, he would abandon the big bags and keep the small ones. No matter what, he could not return empty-handed from the treasure mountain, so he might as well let him die. "I don't mind. Of course, you can make your own decisions. Besides, you are so quick-witted," Lin Yi said with a hint of playfulness. "Senior, you must be joking." Fei Yangsheng blushed. However, since Lin Yi didn't object, he wouldn't give up on his own. After all, it was a lot of spiritual jades. The two of them continued forward, and not long after, a river appeared in front of them. The river was 7 to 8 meters wide, and at first glance, it looked calm. The river water flowed slowly and was so clear that the bottom could be seen, and it emitted an indescribable refreshing aura that refreshed one's spirit. River of divine knowledge? Fei Yangsheng was overjoyed when he saw this. The most important thing in the entire primordial trial land was the river of divine knowledge. It was also the biggest reason he came to participate in the primordial trial. At this time, when he suddenly saw such a mysterious river, he subconsciously thought it was the river of divine knowledge. However, Lin Yi shook his head. Although the river in front of him was indeed not an ordinary river, it was too far-fetched to say that it was the legendary river of divine knowledge. After all, whether it was the geographical location or various related descriptions, the river of divine knowledge was far from the one in front of him. There was actually such a clear river in such an unfathomable place. It looked exactly the same as a river on the surface. No matter how he thought about it, it was very strange, right? Fei Yangsheng couldn't care less. He hurriedly rushed forward and carefully put the 2 bags of elixirs aside. Then, he reached out to drink the river water. The river water of the river of divine knowledge could greatly enhance one's divine knowledge. This was a common saying in almost all the legendary versions of the river of divine knowledge. The most direct way to use it was to drink it into one's stomach. If it was cold or the others, Lin Yi would definitely stop them. No matter what, they had to figure out the details of this river first. However, since it was Fei Yangsheng, there was nothing he could say. Anyway, they weren't particularly familiar with each other. Since Fei Yangsheng was in high spirits, there was no need to disturb him. Moreover, it shouldn't be too dangerous to just drink some water. As a result, Just as Fei Yangxing's hand reached into the water, before he could even scoop up the water, a hand covered with fine scales suddenly stretched out from the clear river water and grabbed him first. With a howl, Fei Yangxing was dragged down on the spot. He couldn't even struggle. This scene not only scared Fei Yangxing out of his wits, but even Lin Yi was taken aback. Because his divine knowledge was always sensing the surroundings, from the beginning to the end, he didn't notice that there was such a monster hiding in the river water. Even a powerful existence like the brain-eating insect had never been able to hide from Lin Yi's divine knowledge. After all, he had the spirit of the mysterious ascending stage. The river in front of him was only 10 steps away from Lin Yi. Such a monster was right under his nose, and he didn't notice it at all. Just thinking about this made Lin Yi break out in cold sweat. Fortunately, it was Fei Yangxing. Otherwise, if something happened to any of Cold and the others, Lin Yi would definitely blame himself to death. After Fei Yangxing was dragged down, in just a blink of an eye, the river's surface returned to its previous calmness. There was no clue to be seen with the naked eye. It was still so clear that the bottom could be seen. The monster just now could not be found, and there was no trace of Fei Yangxing either. It gave people the feeling that nothing had happened. You do have some skills, but is it appropriate to play tricks in front of me? Lin Yi's eyes narrowed into slits, and he slowly walked toward the river. This river gave him a strange feeling from the beginning, and now he understood the source of the strangeness. It was the monster just now. Soon, Lin Yi stopped at the place where Fei Yangxing had an accident just now. He looked quietly at the bottom of the river. Although he still couldn't see anything strange, his divine knowledge had already sensed some clues. The monster might be able to hide its traces perfectly, but it just dragged Fei Yangxing down with it. It was ridiculously difficult to hide Fei Yangxing in front of Lin Yi. Chapter 52-42. He didn't know what kind of ability the monster had, and he didn't know how strong it was. Of course, he couldn't act rashly at this time. As for Fei Yangxing, he could only let him suffer a little more. If he was lucky, Lin Yi might be able to save his life. But if the monster didn't show up, then he could only blame himself for being unlucky. After all, he couldn't let Lin Yi risk his life again and again to save an outsider like him, right? Fortunately, the heavens were on his side this time. The monster couldn't help but make another move when it saw that Lin Yi wasn't moving at all. A hand covered in scales shot out of the water abruptly, and the situation was exactly the same as before. This time, its target was Lin Yi's ankle. Its intention was obvious. It wanted to drag Lin Yi into the river, just like it did to Fei Yangxing. As long as he was in the water, it would be its world. Its movement was fast. Not only did it come out of the water abruptly, but it also didn't cause any ripples after it came out of the water. Its speed was also amazing. Even if an ordinary person wanted to guard against it, they wouldn't have the strength to do so. Unfortunately, its opponent was Lin Yi. Lin Yi had at least 10 ways to deal with its sneak attack, and this time, to ensure that nothing went wrong, he used the most unsolvable method. The hand had clearly grabbed Lin Yi's ankle, but the next moment, it suddenly grabbed nothing. Then, Lin Yi appeared next to it, raised his hand, and a blue electric arc appeared. Taking advantage of the electric shock, he pulled the monster out of the water. He didn't know that he hadn't seen it, but he was shocked when he saw the monster's strange appearance. At first glance, he looked like a 4- or 5-year-old child, but his entire body was covered in dense black scales, and there was a medium-sized turtle shell on his back. There was a pit on the top of his head, and there was a lot of water in the pit. Anyone would be shocked by such an appearance. Kappa. This thought suddenly flashed in Lin Yi's mind. The image in front of him was exactly the same as the water monsters in folklore. Kappa was also called Water Tiger, and it was a water monster recorded in the Compendium of Materia Medica. However, he had always thought that it was just a legend. He didn't expect to meet a living one here today. "You know me?" The Kappa murmured, and at the same time, it stared at Lin Yi with great vigilance. Strictly speaking, it was an amphibious creature. The water was its world, and it could also move freely on land. Obviously, it was only in the water that it was confident. Now that it was suddenly grabbed by Lin Yi, it was extremely nervous. Looking at its posture, It didn't seem to want to attack Lin Yi, but to find a way to escape. Hee, it really is the legendary Kappa. This primordial trial has truly broadened my horizons. Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. First it was Gomong, and now it was the Kappa. The ancient trial really lived up to its reputation. It really felt like returning to the ancient era. Human, what do you want? The Kappa still stared at Lin Yi with great vigilance. Nothing, I'm just a little curious. Lin Yi appeared very relaxed. In fact, there was really nothing to be nervous about. Before this Kappa was caught, he was really nervous for a while. After all, something that could hide from his divine sense was definitely not easy to deal with. However, there was no need to worry now, because this guy was at most a Foundation establishment level spirit beast. It couldn't pose any real threat to Lin Yi. As for why it could hide from Lin Yi's divine sense, it was most likely the Kappa's innate ability. After all, this guy was an existence equivalent to a river god in some legends. Leave this place, leave the 100 Herb Garden, or you will regret it, the Kappa threatened. Unfortunately, its body was too small, and it was dragged up by Lin Yi, so this threat was not much of a deterrent. So this is the 100 Herb Garden? Lin Yi nodded, looked it up and down and said, then, are you the master of this place? I'm not. I'm just the gardener here. If my master finds out, you're dead. Hurry up and leave this place, human. The Kappa tried to drive him away again. Who is your master? Lin Yi ignored it and continued to ask with great interest. My master is... The Kappa suddenly paused. Its eyes blinked, and the water that had accumulated in the depression on its head suddenly soared into the sky. Then, it poured down like rain. As soon as its body came into contact with the water, it immediately melted into nothingness. It looks quite simple and honest, but I didn't expect it to be so cunning. Lin Yi shook his head. His figure flashed and suddenly appeared in front of the right side. Without hesitation, he used 1,000 frenzied kicks. Bang! Accompanied by a muffled sound, a thin figure suddenly appeared on the tip of Lin Yi's foot. Then, without any suspense, it flew out and fell heavily into a pile of spirit herbs dozens of meters away. You, how can you see me? The Kappa didn't care about its injury. Its face that was covered with thick scales squeezed out an extremely shocked expression. Disappearing into the water was the innate ability of the Kappa race. Even existences that were much stronger than them couldn't detect it. It didn't expect that it would fail in front of a human. Is it strange? Lin Yi asked it back. It was true that this guy's ability to merge into the water was very good. Just like when it hid in the river, it could be said to be flawless. Even Lin Yi's divine sense couldn't detect it. However, at least 50% of the reason was that the clear river water made people subconsciously become careless. Now that this factor was gone, even if Lin Yi couldn't completely lock onto its position, he could still find some clues and signs. This was enough for him. The Kappa was obviously choked and couldn't speak. Just as Lin Yi judged, it wasn't a powerful existence. If it was a little stronger in the river, it would be enough to deal with most spirit beasts and human cultivators at the Foundation establishment stage. However, once it was on the ground, it was much weaker. In the end, the only trump card it could rely on was the innate ability of the Kappa race, disappearing into the water. But now, Lin Yi had broken its innate ability, and it was stuck on the ground, unable to return to the river. Even if its psychological defense wasn't completely broken, it wasn't far from it. Human, what do you want? The Kappa looked at Lin Yi with a little panic. It pointed at the rare spirit herbs around them and said, if you leave now, I can let you take some spirit herbs with you. Otherwise, if you alarm the master, you're dead. Chapter 52:43. These are all rare and precious elixirs. How can they be trash? Kappa quickly argued. It was the gardener of this place, and it could be said that every spiritual herb here was its blood and sweat. However, when it saw that Lin Yi was empty-handed, it immediately became speechless. It seemed that this human really didn't care about the spiritual herbs it had cultivated. After being stunned for a moment, Kappa suddenly said, I can give you an even more precious spiritual herb, but you have to leave this place. Oh? Let me see, Linny said with interest. Hearing this, Kappa walked towards the river. When it saw Lin-Yi stretch out his hand to stop it, it said, "The spiritual herb is in the river. Fine. If you dare to lie to me, I will blow up this river and destroy your 100-herb garden." Lin-Yi warned. To be honest, he didn't trust this Kappa, but there was nothing to worry about. With Kappa's strength, it wouldn't matter even if he let the tiger return to the mountain. Kappa carefully walked around Lin-Yi, and only when it returned to the river did it let out a sigh of relief. Looking at Lin-Yi, who was still standing in the same place, its eyes rolled. If it wasn't for Lin-Yi's warning just now, it might really hide and never come out again. But now, it couldn't. If it really angered Lin-Yi, blowing up the river and destroying the 100-herb garden would be a small matter. If it attracted its master and ruined its master's plan, then it would really be finished. Even if it had 10 lives, it wouldn't be enough to die. Sure enough, not long after, it reappeared on the river surface, holding a small bead in its hand. It was transparent and flawless like the clear river water, like a luminous pearl, exuding an intoxicating light. At first glance, it was obvious that it was not an ordinary item. "This water bead is for you. Leave this place quickly, human." Kappa held the small bead and said, "Give it to me." Lin-Yi's tone was very calm, but it was unquestionable. Kappa hesitated for a moment. Obviously, it didn't want to leave the river. Otherwise, it wouldn't feel safe, especially when it had to face a dangerous human cultivator like Lin-Yi. However, it had no other choice. If it dared to say no, Lin-Yi might do something to it. It couldn't bear the consequences. In the end, Kappa obediently walked over and handed the water bead to Lin-Yi. Lin-Yi was a little surprised when he held it in his hand. He thought that this water bead would be as hard as other beads, but he didn't expect it to be soft. It was really a water bead, but it was covered with a layer of transparent water film. "What's the use of this?" Lin-Yi asked curiously. He had traveled all over the Heaven Step Island for several years and could be said to be very knowledgeable, but he had never seen this kind of water bead. However, he still had good eyesight. He could feel that this water bead was not simple. Just holding it in his hand made him feel refreshed. This water bead can clear the mind and calm the chi. Its main use is to heal the spiritual sense. If the spiritual sense is injured, it can recover in a very short time. Kappa explained in detail. Really? Lin-Yi was happy when he heard this. No wonder he felt so comfortable holding it in his hand. It turned out that it was something specially used to heal the spiritual sense. Don't forget that he was now in the soul body. This thing was simply a great supplement for him. With this water droplet, Lin-Yi felt even more confident. After all, a soul injury was a huge problem. If he really did get hurt, his self-healing abilities wouldn't be able to be of much use. Just like last time when he was injured, he basically relied on the star ink charcoal to recover. After so many months of continuous use, the spiritual sense energy of the star ink charcoal had been consumed to the point that not much was left. Once he suffered a serious injury again, it would be hard to say if he could recover smoothly. Maybe his soul would collapse. During this period, Lin-Yi was worried about this. He needed to consume spiritual sense energy to maintain his soul body. Now, the star ink charcoal was his only source of spiritual sense energy. Once it was completely consumed, it would not be long before he returned to Heaven Step Island. If it was before, it would not have mattered. But now that Cold and the others were in the dangerous primordial trial land, how could he go back with peace of mind? Fortunately, the remaining spiritual sense energy of the star ink charcoal could still support him for a period of time. However, there was a very important premise, and that was not to be injured. Once he was injured, the spiritual sense energy needed to heal him would be no small matter. It was at least thousands of times more than what he needed to maintain his spiritual sense. The remaining spiritual sense energy of the star ink charcoal could not withstand such a large consumption. Fortunately, Lin-Yi had a lot of means to protect himself, and he had figured out the almost unsolvable means of semi-soul and primordial soul states. Putting aside everything else, it was not easy to seriously injure Lin-Yi. Even an existence like the brain-eating insect could not do it. It was because of this that the star ink charcoal could last until now. Otherwise, if he was injured every few days, his spiritual sense energy would have long been depleted. However, in this dangerous primordial trial land, accidents could happen all the time. Even Lin Yi could not guarantee that he would not be injured. If he was really injured, the remaining spiritual sense energy of the starring charcoal would not be enough. What should he do then? Now, the water droplet that Kappa took out gave him a glimmer of hope. Although it was not as versatile as the starring charcoal, it could provide spiritual sense energy at all times. But if it could really heal his spiritual sense, as Kappa said, then it could solve a problem for him. At the very least, he would not have to worry about being injured. Of course it's true. Okay, I've already given you my best treasure. Human, you should leave quickly, Kappa urged. For it, taking out a water droplet was already a violation of the rules. If Lin Yi stayed here for too long and was discovered by its master, the consequences would be unimaginable. Lin Yi put away the water droplet and suddenly smiled. Did I say that I would leave here? You dare to act shamelessly. Despicable human. Kappa suddenly became anxious. It had tried every possible way to drive Lin Yi away, to the point that it did not hesitate to give up its water droplet. How could it have imagined that Lin Yi would have such a face? Humans had always been despicable and shameless. This saying was indeed true. Hey, you have to be responsible for what you say. When did I say that I would leave if you gave me a water droplet? Lin Yi looked at it and said, Woo. Kappa tilted its head and thought for a long time, but it could not think of a way to refute. Because Lin Yi had never said anything like that from beginning to end, it was just its own wishful thinking. Chapter 52:44. How many more do you want? Kappa jumped up and even forgot about Lin Yi's overwhelming strength. He pointed at Lin Yi's head and scolded, You greedy, shameless human. This is a water droplet that can only be produced in 100 years. How many do you think there are? Lin Yi paused. He couldn't help but look at this childlike Kappa curiously. He did look a little weird, with a little bit of slyness in him, but he was still a simple and honest guy. That impatient look of his was quite interesting. After a while, Kappa also reacted. It quickly retracted its hand and took a few steps back. Looking at Lin Yi, it stammered in fear, You should leave quickly. I don't have any more water droplets, not even one. Really? Lin Yi didn't believe it. He questioned, Since it can only be produced in 100 years, and no one has been here for at least 1,000 years, how can there only be one? Even if there aren't 10 or 20, there should be at least 8 or 10, right? This primordial trial ground only opened once every 1,000 years. In other words, the last time a human cultivator set foot in this place was at least 1,000 years ago. Moreover, this place was so strange and remote that ordinary people would not be able to discover it. Perhaps no one had come here for thousands of years. 8 or 10. Are you crazy? Kappa was about to go berserk again. However, facing the pressure from Lin Yi, it didn't dare to be too presumptuous. It could only suppress its anger and patiently explained, An entire river, under the protection of our Kappa clan, can only produce one water droplet after 100 years. After the water droplet is formed, it needs to be nourished continuously. Moreover, we have to spend even more energy to nourish the holy water droplet. Holy water droplet? Lin Yi's eyes lit up. Kappa suddenly realized that it had said something it shouldn't have. It quickly changed its words. What holy water droplet? I'm just talking about water droplets. Anyway, there is only one water droplet. Even if you kill me, I won't get another one. Really? Lin Yi stared at it with a faint smile. Kappa couldn't help but feel a little guilty. After thinking for a while, it said, If worst comes to worst, I will return that human to you. That human? Oh, you mean Fei Yangsheng? Hearing this, Lin Yi was embarrassed. He had almost forgotten about this. After all, Kappa was not one of them, so he didn't really care about Fei Yangsheng. Fortunately, Kappa was not a ferocious spirit beast. Otherwise, after such a long time, Fei Yangsheng would have eaten up everything. Not long after, Fei Yangsheng was dragged out by Kappa like a dead dog. It seemed that he didn't suffer any serious injuries. He just lost consciousness temporarily. Bubbles were still coming out of his mouth. Leave, leave quickly. Otherwise, I guarantee that you will die here. Absolutely. Kappa almost begged. Of course, it didn't care about Lin Yi's life or death, but the problem was that if its master found out that a human cultivator had broken in, even it would be punished, and it might even be buried with Lin Yi. How about this? I won't make things difficult for you. Answer a few of my questions, and I will leave after you understand them. Lin Yi said. Kappa hesitated for a moment. It knew that it wasn't a good idea to delay like this. However, it couldn't defeat Lin Yi, so it could only bite the bullet and said, "Okay, you said it yourself. You can't go back on your words." "Okay, how many Kappa are there here?" Lin Yi asked. This wasn't what he really cared about. He was just curious. "Just me," Kappa answered straightforwardly. "You are the only one in your Kappa clan?" Lin Yi was stunned. He thought that since it was a clan, there should be as many Kappa as the ancient Gomon clan. There should at least be an ancient Kappa king, but he didn't expect that there was only one Kappa. There used to be a lot of them, but a big accident happened 100 years ago. Everyone was killed by my master. I was the only one left to take care of the herb garden. Kappa said with a hint of sadness. What kind of existence is your master? Don't you hate him? Lin Yi asked casually. According to what Kappa said, it should be an irreconcilable enmity. Why would it continue to work for that master? Kappa was silent for a moment, then said, I can't tell you. Okay, then I will ask something else. Lin Yi didn't insist. He changed the topic and asked, Is there anything special about this river? Is it the legendary river of divine knowledge? River of divine knowledge? How can it be the river of divine knowledge? Kappa looked at Lin Yi as if he was an idiot. He curled his lips and said, The river of divine knowledge is the largest river in the world. It is more than 100 zhang wide. How wide is this river of mine? There is nothing special about this river. It is only because it is guarded by our Kappa clan that it becomes different. This answer wasn't surprising. Lin Yi didn't think it was the river of divine knowledge at all. He continued to ask, One last question. Tell me about the holy water bead. This? Kappa hesitated for a moment. He hated himself for spilling the beans. Judging from this human's unforgiving behavior, he wouldn't leave until he figured out what was going on. In the end, Kappa could only brace himself and explain. The holy water bead is the most sacred object of our Kappa clan. It is said that it is the first generation of water beads. After being nourished by our ancestors for countless years, its function has far exceeded the scope of ordinary water beads. It is also because of the holy water bead that we were valued by our master. However, 100 years ago, when we were collectively raising the holy water bead, an accident happened. A crack appeared on the holy water bead. In a rage, our master killed everyone. Oh, so that's how it is. It was only then that Lin Yi realized what was going on. This Kappa clan was really quite pitiful. Not only was their holy item stolen, the entire clan was forced to be slaves, and the slightest problem with their holy item almost wiped out the entire clan. There really wasn't anyone else who could live such a tragic life. I have said what I should and shouldn't say. You can leave now, right? Kappa looked at Lin Yi eagerly. He was afraid that Lin Yi would go back on his words again. If that happened, he would really be at his wit's end. All right, if that's the case, then tell me how to leave this place. Lin Yi nodded without hesitation. Chapter 52-45. More importantly, Lin Yi's top priority right now was to meet up with Cold and the others. He didn't dare to waste too much time here. Okay, come with me. Kappa was overjoyed. As long as Lin Yi was willing to leave this place as soon as possible, it didn't mind sending Lin Yi and Cold along the way. However, at this moment, a buzzing sound suddenly came from afar. Although he couldn't see the appearance of the other party, clearly due to the distance, Lin Yi's divine sense had already locked on the position and shape of the other party. It was a giant poisonous bee the size of an adult. Patrol bee. Why is it here? Kappa froze. Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't react at all. Kappa, on the other hand, was nervous to the point where he didn't know what to do. Are you afraid? Lin Yi glanced at it. Kappa was so nervous that it stuttered. If it finds out, you're dead. I'm dead too. But this guy doesn't look strong? Linny was a little surprised. The patrol bee looked scary, and it didn't look easy to mess with. However, it was just a spirit beast at the Foundation establishment stage. It was a piece of cake for Lin E to deal with it. It's not strong? Kappa wanted to retort subconsciously, since none of the patrol bees were easy to mess with. But after thinking about Lin Yi's performance just now, a mere patrol bee didn't seem to be a threat to the human at all. For the sake of the water droplet you gave me, I can get rid of it for you without anyone knowing, Linny suggested. To be honest, he didn't have any bad feelings for this Kappa. On the contrary, he felt that this guy was actually not bad. He would help it if he could. Impossible. Kappa shook its head quickly. What's impossible? Didn't you say that we're dead if it finds us? Don't tell me you want to help it deal with me? Linny asked in surprise. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that no matter how strong you are, you can't eliminate a single patrol bee without being noticed. Because they share the same brain, once one patrol bee is in trouble, all the other patrol bees will notice it immediately. So no matter what, as long as it discovers your existence, Master and the other patrol bees will know, Kappa said with a bitter face. Common brain mechanism? That would be troublesome. Linny couldn't help but frown. The existence of such a mechanism was indeed a bit difficult to solve. Even if he could kill the patrol bee in a second, it would be useless. As long as he was discovered by the patrol bee, the situation would be out of control. In this way, the only option left for Lin E was to escape. If he was alone, it wouldn't matter. Unless he was willing, no matter how many patrol bees there were, they wouldn't be able to detect him. However, the problem was that Fei Yongxing was lying unconscious on the ground. The patrol bee's speed wasn't slow, and bees had always had good perception. Linny wasn't confident that he could escape with such a burden. While they were talking, the patrol bee had already rushed in their direction. Its purpose was very clear. Even Linny was a little nervous. Could it have already discovered him? Kappa was far more panicked than Lin E. In a hurry, he dragged Fei Yongxing on the ground and jumped into the river. At the same time, he said to Lin E, "You come in too. I'll use invisible underwater to cover you. It shouldn't be able to find you." Lin E was stunned for a moment. In fact, he didn't need to jump into the river, but in order to experience the Kappa's innate ability, he still followed. After Kappa brought Lin E and Fei Yongxing into the water, Lin E soon felt a faint layer of water covering his body. It didn't feel heavy at first, but when his body was completely covered by this layer of water, a magical scene happened. Linny found that his primordial spirit had become transparent like the river. At first glance, there was almost no trace of it. It didn't take long for Lin E to figure out the theory behind it. It was a very advanced camouflage. In truth, many creatures in the natural world had camouflage, but creatures like the Kappa's camouflage were extremely rare. Of course, invisible underwater was definitely not a simple camouflage. Otherwise, it could at most confuse the naked eye, but it couldn't confuse the perception of divine sense. The real deceiving divine sense was this layer of water. Because of this layer of water covering his body, in the perception of divine sense, Lin Yi's whole body became the same as the river. Lin Yi couldn't help but secretly praise it. No wonder it was the innate ability of the Kappa family. Invisible underwater was really brilliant. It didn't take long for the patrol bee to appear above the river. At the same time, it sent a strange and sharp divine sense transmission. "Kappa, come out." Kappa's heart suddenly skipped a beat, but he didn't dare to act rashly. He could only use invisible underwater to carefully hide the figures of Lin Yi and Fei Yongxing. At the same time, he slowly emerged from the river. "Kappa, Master is summoning you." The patrol bee continued to use divine sense transmission. Hearing this, Kappa was slightly relieved. It seemed that the other party hadn't discovered Lin Yi and Fei Yongxing yet, so he said, "But I have to stay to guard the herb garden. This is Master's order." "You go. I will guard the herb garden. This is Master's new order," the patrol bee said stiffly. Kappa was suddenly in a dilemma. It didn't matter to him, but if he left, he wouldn't be able to use invisible underwater to hide Lin Yi and Fei Yongxing anymore. If he left, he would definitely be exposed, and all his efforts would be in vain. What are you waiting for? Master is waiting. The patrolling bee urged. Brother Patrol Bee, can you tell me why Master summoned me? Kappa asked eagerly. Chapter 52:46. However, he still didn't dare to deactivate invisible entry. The patrol bee's perception and alertness were top-notch. Even if he could lure them away, it wouldn't be that easy to fool them. Can't we go up? Linny asked. No, the only exit here is the stairway. If you go up, you will definitely be noticed by the patrol bee. I can only take you through the waterway, Kappa said. Unknowingly, it and Linny had become locusts on the same rope. Instead, it had become their accomplice. Linny didn't object. After all, he had nothing to be afraid of. Even if they were exposed, he had enough power to protect himself. As for what would happen to the unconscious Fei Yongsheng, he could only leave it to fate. Kappa's speed in the water was extremely fast. Using invisible entry, it brought Lin Yi and Fei Yongsheng downstream. In just a few moments, they had reached the end of the river. In front of them was a huge gate. However, the gate wasn't completely closed. When Kappa approached it, a small opening suddenly appeared in the middle, just enough for one person to pass through. Behind the gate is the stairway. You can go out by climbing the stairway. Kappa explained, then took the lead and went through the gate. Lin Yi also pushed Fei Yongsheng into the gate, then followed closely behind. As soon as the two passed through the gate, they were pulled out of the water by Kappa. In front of them was a huge and empty tree hole. They couldn't see the top at first glance. They only knew that the tree was very tall. There were spiral stairs on the inner wall. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that it was a stairway to heaven. Hurry up, the stairway is the outside world, Kappa urged. It then walked towards the water curtain cave in front of them. Hey, what's behind this water curtain cave? Why is it so noisy? Linny asked curiously. He vaguely heard that it was very noisy in front of them. It felt like a lot of people were having a party. Behind us is the inner garden. Today is our master's wedding. Many guests have been invited. Of course, it's very lively. Why do you care so much? Hurry up, or you won't be able to leave if someone finds out. Kappa urged. Wedding? You guys are into this too? Hearing that, Linny smiled, but he didn't intend to explore further. He immediately dragged the unconscious Fei Yongsheng up the celestial stairway. No matter what, he couldn't waste any more time in this place. Kappa finally let out a sigh of relief, thinking that it had finally sent away these two human gods of plague. However, before it could walk out of the water curtain cave, Lin Yi suddenly came back with Fei Yongsheng in a hurry. You won't go back on your word again, right? Kappa was startled and hurriedly begged. I really don't have any more water droplets with me. The holy water droplets are in Master's hands. Don't even think about getting them unless you want to die. I beg you, leave quickly. No, I can't leave. Linny smiled bitterly and shook his head. Why can't we leave? The celestial stairway is right here. You just have to climb up and you'll be out. Don't tell me you can't even climb up. Kappa couldn't help but become anxious. It thought that Linny was determined to continue blackmailing it. Humans had always had a bad reputation. Despicable, shameless, and insatiable were all adjectives tailored to describe humans. I can climb up, but I've encountered an old opponent. I have to hide for the time being. Linny smiled bitterly. What old opponent? Kappa was full of disbelief. The brain-eating bug, Linny said seriously. For safety's sake, he had just transformed into his Yuan Shun state and floated up to explore for a while. As a result, he took a deep breath. The brain-eating bug, his old opponent, was actually swooping down from above. It really shocked him. Fortunately, he acted cautiously. Otherwise, he would really be in big trouble this time. There was no doubt that for the current Lin Yi, the brain-eating bug was a powerful and almost invincible opponent. With his current means, he could not do anything to the brain-eating bug. If he fought it, he would only suffer. Admittedly, last time he successfully escaped the brain-eating bug's pursuit using his Yuan Shun state. But the premise was that they were far enough apart. Once they were close, the brain-eating bug's perception was very likely to detect his Yuan Shun state. At that time, he would be in big trouble. Lin Yi did not dare to take such a risk. The only thing he could do now was to hide and get as far away from the brain-eating bug as possible. Brain-eating bug? You mean Sir Envoy? That's an existence on the same level as our master. Kappa was also shocked. It had obviously heard of the brain-eating bug. Although it did not believe it at first, it made sense after thinking about it carefully. Although the brain-eating bug and its master had always been at odds, they were both the left and right hands of that Sir. Since it was its master's wedding day, it was not surprising that the brain-eating bug came to support them. So, hurry up and take us back to hide. This time, it was Lin Yi's turn to urge it. Although he found that the brain-eating bug's position was still relatively high, with the brain-eating bug's speed, even if it was just ascending slowly, there was not much time for him to dawdle. How do we go back? If we come in from the outside, we just need to open the small gate, and no one will care. But if we want to go out from here, we must open the big gate. The movement will definitely alert everyone in the inner garden. We won't even know how we died. Kappa said anxiously. Then, Lin Yi thought for a moment before making a decision. How about this? We'll go into the inner garden, and you think of a way to hide this bastard someplace. As long as no one finds out, I don't have to worry about it. I have my ways. You're crazy. Kappa was shocked when it heard this. Not only was its master inside, but all the elixirs here were also gathered. At the same time, there were VIPs coming from all directions. How could it hide a living person like Fei Yangsheng? However, Lin Yi did not have time to waste with it because the brain-eating bug had entered the range of his divine sense. If they did not leave, they would be discovered. He immediately said, "No matter what, you find a way, that's it." As soon as his voice fell, Lin Yi disappeared, leaving behind a panicked Kappa and an unconscious Fei Yangsheng. Shameless human. In the end, Kappa was forced to bite the bullet and bring Fei Yangsheng with him. The moment they passed through the water curtain cave, it used its innate ability to enter the water to conceal itself. Fortunately, all the guests' attention was on its master, so no one noticed it. Finally, it managed to sneak in without any danger. Chapter 52-47. There were more than 100 spirit beasts of various sizes, and each of them had a variety of appearances. However, there was a handsome man lying lazily on the high platform in the middle. That was its master. Master. Kappa walked over and knelt down respectfully. Why are you so slow? The handsome man frowned slightly. If it was in the past, he would have punished Kappa severely. However, today was a special day. For once, he was magnanimous. He ordered, "Come, nourish my holy water bead. Let everyone have a look." The handsome man took out a water droplet from his pocket as he spoke. However, his water droplet was much bigger than Lin Yi's, and even the light it emitted was different. Lin Yi's water droplet was clear and transparent, but the man's water droplet emitted an indescribable holy light, making people want to worship it subconsciously. The only drawback was that there was a shallow crack in it. This greatly reduced the light it emitted. Otherwise, it would be much more holy and solemn than it was now. Yes. Kappa respectfully took the holy water bead from the handsome man's hand. He began to nourish the holy water bead with the innate ability of the Kappa clan. The principle was similar to becoming invisible in water. It also covered the holy water bead with a thin layer of water film. However, this water film would soon be completely absorbed by the holy water bead. Therefore, the Kappa had to continuously use this ability until it was exhausted. Don't you still have a water bead? Just use it to nourish the holy water bead. Why do you have to go through so much trouble? Seeing this, the handsome man frowned again. The holy water bead could directly absorb an entire normal water bead. Although it couldn't repair the crack, it could at least make it shine brightly in a very short time. That was the reason why he summoned Kappa to meet with him. Hearing this, Kappa panicked. He stammered, "Master, that water bead had some problems not long ago. It needs to be nourished before it can be used." Trash. You can't even handle such a small matter. The handsome man's face darkened. He coldly snorted. "After this is over, you will receive 100 lashes. Yes. Thank you for the punishment, Master." Kappa quickly replied. Under Kappa's nourishment, the holy light of the holy water bead gradually grew stronger. In the beginning, the spirit beasts of all sizes did not pay much attention to it. However, when the holy water pearl's radiance enveloped the entire place, the spirit beasts instantly quietened down and fixed their gazes on the holy water pearl. He could not move a single inch. Suddenly, an abrupt voice sounded. "Oh, are you showing off your treasures here again?" The spirit beasts were taken aback. Who would dare to speak in such a frivolous tone at a time like this? Is that person tired of living? Turning his head to look, what he saw was actually a large, white, and tender worm. However, this worm was extremely strange. On its back was a pair of wings that symbolized the primordial Gomong race. At that moment, it was flying over fearlessly. According to the rules of the spirit beast world, unless they had been informed in advance, flying above their heads at such a low altitude was tantamount to provoking them. This was especially true during such an important banquet. Such behavior was simply courting death. Where did this bug come from? How dare you barge into Lord Protector's wedding banquet? A black ape with a triangle on its head immediately leaped up. This was a rare opportunity, and it wanted to perform well. Although the Lord Protector had gathered them together in the name of the wedding, with so many big and small spiritual beasts together, there was bound to be a clear distinction between the strong and the weak. With its strength comparable to that of the gold core stage, it naturally did not dare to be lonely. It was worried that it would not have a chance to show its face, and as a result, this reckless insect came to its door. Judging from its appearance, this three-horned ape was much more powerful and domineering than the insect. Its strong killing intent made people not dare to approach it, especially its triangular horn tips, which were emitting a cold light. Each horn tip was condensed with different elements. Water, fire, and wind were fused with each other, and finally condensed into the amazing power of the three-horned horn. The power of this strike was at least comparable to that of a late-stage golden core cultivator. If it were any of the other spirit beasts present, this attack from the three-horned ape was enough to make them retreat. Even if their strength was above it, they would have to weigh it carefully. After all, the power of the three-phase horn thrust was not something to be trifled with. Unfortunately, this time, it was facing the brain-eating insect. The brain-eating insect didn't even look at it. Just when it was about to hit itself, an incomparably sharp and sinister claw suddenly appeared on its body. Then, it didn't care about the three-faced horn stab and directly clawed at it. Crack! Accompanied by the sound of bones breaking, the triangular horn that the three-horned ape was so proud of was forcibly clawed off. Not only that, even its head was clawed into pieces, and in an instant, it became a mutilated corpse. There was a sudden dead silence, and all the spiritual beasts, without exception, had a dumbfounded expression. The scene just now was too sudden and unexpected. They really could not digest it for a while. What kind of divine being was this insect? In the blink of an eye, the brain-eating insect had flown to the center of the high platform, and the newly grown claw did not hesitate to claw at Kappa. Its target was, of course, not Kappa, but the holy water bead in Kappa's hand. If it wanted the holy water bead, Kappa could not resist at all with its little strength. However, the obstacle it needed to face was not Kappa, but the master behind Kappa. The brain-eating insect's ferocious claw was finally stopped by a white palm. There was no shocking momentum or aftermath. It seemed that the two just clapped their palms lightly, and then they both took a big step back. TSK, as expected of the Lord Protector. You can actually resolve my attack in such a gentle manner. I admire you. The brain-eating insect flattered without sincerity. Likewise, Lord Envoy is also not bad. After sleeping for hundreds of years, you still have such strength. It's an eye-opener for me. The handsome man had a calm smile on his face. As soon as the voice fell, the audience suddenly burst into an uproar. All the big and small spiritual beasts finally realized the identity of the insect. It turned out to be the Lord Envoy who had been sleeping for hundreds of years. They could not be blamed for their slow reaction. The brain-eating insect had always been elusive, and there were very few spiritual beasts who had seen its face. In addition, its form was complex and ever-changing, and it often slept for hundreds of years, so it was normal for it to not react for a while. However, in this way, they felt a little sorry for the three-horned ape just now. It dared to attack the legendary Lord Envoy without asking anything. It deserved to die so miserably. After all, this was a brain-eating insect that could be on equal footing with the Lord Protector in terms of status and strength. To be continued. Chapter 52:48. Is that so? That's still not as impressive as Lord Protector. You have so many underlings under your command, and you can command hundreds of people with one call. I'm different. I'm a loner with the title of Special Envoy, yet I'm still offended by these small fries. It's really shameful, the brain-eating bug said in an unpredictable tone. Lord Protector is overpraising me. Forgive me for saying too much, but with your reputation as the brain-eating bug, who would dare to be your underling? The handsome man said sarcastically. In the eyes of the brain-eating bug, all spirit beasts were just its food. If they followed it, they might become its rations at any time. Unless there was a hole in their brains, who would dare to be its underling? That's true. I'm a loner, so that Lord Protector can be at ease. Unlike Lord Protector, who is loyal to him. However, I also advise you to take it easy, Lord Protector. There are too many people, and if some idiot touches the Lord's reverse scale, I'm afraid even Lord Protector will have to bear the consequences, the brain-eating bug said with a smile. Don't worry about it. Lord Protector, don't tell me you're here just to chat with me? The handsome man looked at it up and down. That's not it. I heard that Lord Protector is getting married, and I happen to be nearby. Since we've worked together, I should come and congratulate you, shouldn't I? The brain-eating bug said. That being said, this guy was empty-handed. Not only did he kill the three-horned ape in front of everyone, but he also directly snatched the holy water droplet. No matter how one looked at it, he did not look like he was here to congratulate them. He did not come with good intentions. However, since it said so, the handsome man could not refute it, at least not in public, so he said, Then I have to thank Lord Protector for giving me face. You're welcome. I came empty-handed. As long as Lord Protector doesn't mind, it's fine. After all, I don't have a big family business like you, and I don't have any treasures on hand, so I can only come and support you, the brain-eating bug said. Not at all. It's an honor for Lord Protector to come and support me, the handsome man responded with a faint smile. Oh, it's great that Lord Protector is so understanding, but I have a presumptuous request. I hope Lord Protector can agree to it, the brain-eating bug said. Give him an inch and he wants a mile. This word appeared in the minds of all the spirit beasts present at the same time. The brain-eating insect's behavior was more than that of a hoodlum. It could be said to be a rogue to a certain extent. It was the brain-eating insect. If it was any other spirit beast that dared to be so presumptuous in front of the Lord Protector, they would have died a tragic death. Don't tell me you want my holy water bead? The handsome man said with a faint smile. Can I? The brain-eating bug's eyes lit up. Everyone wanted a treasure like the holy water droplet, and it was no exception. Otherwise, it would not have tried to snatch it so blatantly. Mr. Special Envoy, it's fine that you came to my wedding banquet empty-handed, but you actually want my treasures. Is this really appropriate? The handsome man was instantly amused. It doesn't seem appropriate, so forget it. The brain-eating bug gave up quite straightforwardly. Its goal was not the holy water bead, it was just a whim. It immediately said, looking at the overall situation, the one with the most eyes and ears is you, Lord Protector. All the flowers and trees are your eyes and ears. Even the slightest movement on the ground cannot escape your control. So, I would like to trouble Lord Protector to help me find a person. A person? The handsome man was slightly taken aback. Yes, a human cultivator named Lin E, the brain-eating bug said directly. When it said this, it did not even think that Linny was in the venue. It was just that it was not easy to detect his primordial spirit state. Why? Does Mr. Special Envoy have a grudge against this human? The handsome man asked with interest. He is my food. No one is allowed to touch him except me. Whoever touches him will die." The brain-eating bug threatened unscrupulously. In fact, it was no wonder that it was so concerned about Lin Yi. It rarely failed when it targeted its food, and a mere human was able to escape from under its nose. This was an unprecedented experience. The more this happened, the more it proved that Lin Yi was unique and powerful. For it, this was an unprecedented human food. Once it missed this opportunity, it might be a lifelong regret. What if I don't agree? The handsome man's expression suddenly sank. The brain-eating bug's threat was effective on other spirit beasts, but it had no effect on it. You don't agree? Aren't you afraid that I'll make a scene here? Are you sure that your ancient well of tranquility can withstand my torment? The brain-eating bug sneered and squinted at him. Regardless of who was stronger or weaker, one thing was certain. If they really fought, at least this place would definitely be destroyed into a mess, and the so-called wedding banquet would naturally be ruined. You dare? The handsome man's expression changed. Do you think I dare or not? The brain-eating bug laughed unscrupulously. At the same time, it shed its insect body and turned into an extremely ferocious and terrifying monster. Every part of its body was a horrifying existence copied after it devoured other powerful spirit beasts. This was almost an ultimate killing weapon that gathered the strongest side of all the local spirit beasts. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. For a moment, swords were drawn and bows were drawn. The other spirit beasts present were suddenly at a loss. Although they were considered to be the younger brothers of the Guardian, they could not intervene in such a high-level battle with their strength. Just like the three-horned ape just now, they were at most cannon fodder material. Fortunately, the situation was tense for a moment, but the two sides did not really fight. The handsome man suddenly laughed and said, "All right, isn't it just looking for someone? On account of today's wedding celebration, I'll agree to this small favor." Then, "Thank you, Sir Guardian." The brain-eating bug quickly returned to its harmless insect appearance. It was the complete opposite of the terrifying appearance of a weapon. "I won't send you off." The handsome man immediately wanted to send the guest off. Although today was his wedding day, no one could afford to have a bad guest like the brain-eating bug. He was not afraid of the brain-eating bug, but he was afraid that the brain-eating bug would ruin his wedding. "Sir Guardian is really ruthless. You didn't even ask me to stay for a drink. In that case, forget it." The brain-eating bug smiled and turned to fly toward the water curtain cave. Seeing that it was so cooperative, all the spirit beasts present, including the handsome man, could not help but sigh in relief. The moodiness of the brain-eating bug really put a lot of pressure on them. If the brain-eating bug did not leave, this wedding banquet would be tormented. Chapter 52:49. It said, "Oh, by the way, if you can't find Lin Yi, please help me find the traces of another group of people. I don't know their names, but it'll be fine as long as it's a group of about 10 people." The others did not understand what it meant, but Lin Yi, who was hiding in the corner in his spirit form, felt his heart skip a beat. The brain-eating bug was obviously referring to Cold and the others. Once it started to target Cold and the others, it would be troublesome. Okay. The handsome man agreed very happily this time. It was obvious that he was eager to send the brain-eating bug away as soon as possible. After all, the brain-eating bug was a real plague to him. "Thank you very much, but you'd better hurry up. Don't let me wait too long, or I'll have to trouble you again." The brain-eating bug left a final threat and left. Now that the brain-eating bug had finally left, the handsome man breathed an imperceptible sigh of relief. He was originally excited to take out the holy water droplet to broaden the horizons of the spirit beasts present, but now he had completely lost the interest. He casually put away the holy water droplet. As for the kappa, it scrambled to the side. Even though it had only been feeding the holy water droplet for a short period of time, it was almost exhausted. At this time, a senior Golden Core stage spirit beast stood up and suggested in front of everyone, "Sir Guardian, the auspicious time has come. Why don't you invite the new madam out for us to see so that we can know who our Madam Guardian is?" "Yes, quickly invite the new madam out." The other spirit beasts also followed suit. A smile appeared on the handsome man's face when he heard this. Seeing as the spirit beasts were in high spirits, he said, "That's great. It's time for her to meet all of you, so that there won't be any misunderstandings in the future. Servants, bring the new madam out." As soon as he said that, four gorgeously dressed maids immediately went to the luxurious tent at the back to invite the new madam out. Of course, they were all transformed from spirit beasts, not pure humans. The transformation of a spirit beast into a human form was not absolutely related to its strength realm. It all depended on whether it had the talent in this aspect. Some spirit beasts could not transform into a human form even if they reached a very high realm, but some could do it at the foundation establishment stage, just like these four maids. At the same time, the wedding banquet finally returned to the festive atmosphere that a wedding banquet should have. All the spirit beasts were laughing and toasting each other, but Linny, who was hiding at the side, felt a little gloomy. It was not surprising that the brain-eating bug was looking for trouble. He was confident enough to escape the brain-eating bug's pursuit. But now the brain-eating bug was targeting Cold and the others, which was really worrying. If that was all, it would be fine. Even if the brain-eating bug really wanted to find Cold and the others, it was not easy to find them. After all, it was difficult to see the situation on the ground, even in the air. Unless one's divine sense was strong to a certain extent, otherwise, it was extremely difficult to carry out a large-scale search from the air. This was something that Linny had experienced deeply. However, the problem was that the brain-eating bug's words revealed a piece of information that made Linny tremble in fear. The handsome man in front of him, who was called the Guardian, had many eyes and ears. Almost all the flowers and trees were his eyes and ears. With his help, it was only a matter of time before the brain-eating bug locked onto Cold and the others' location. What should he do then? The last time, the brain-eating bug was too confident, so it let Cold and the others go indifferently. This time, it had already failed once. Since it mentioned this, it meant that it would do anything in order to catch Linny. When it really came to that point, it would not be able to fight or escape. Linny would really be helpless. It was urgent. Linny was very anxious. He must come up with a countermeasure as soon as possible, otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Fortunately, today was the wedding of the handsome man. With his tense relationship with the brain-eating bug, at least at this time, he would not try his best to find people for the brain-eating bug. Therefore, there was still a little time left for Linny to think of a solution. Of course, it was only a little. Just when Linny was desperately thinking of a solution, the new wife finally came out. When the Guardian's wife walked up the high platform and slowly walked to the side of the handsome man, the atmosphere suddenly boiled. At the same time, Linny was stunned when he saw the person's appearance. The new wife was actually Duanmuyu. All the spirit beasts toasted the new wife in unison. After the toast, they immediately started discussing. One of them stood up and asked on behalf of the spirit beasts, "Lord Guardian, why is the new wife a human?" Even if they were both in human form, the aura of a human and a spirit beast was completely different. Any spirit beast could see that the new wife was definitely a pure human. A dignified Lord Guardian would actually marry a human woman as his wife. This was really strange. Admittedly, they all knew that the Lord Protector loved to transform into a human form. In fact, even the personal attendants of the Lord Protector would choose whether they could transform into a human form as their primary screening condition. Their actions were no different from that of a human. However, this was at most a preference, and it could not change the nature of a spiritual beast. More importantly, if the Lord Guardian were to marry a human woman, what kind of offspring would be created? Humans, spirit beasts, or half-beastmen? The handsome man glanced at the crowd and slowly said, "If it wasn't a human woman, why would I hold such a grand wedding banquet?" Generally speaking, spirit beasts' weddings were not so particular. Even if a ceremony was held at the level of a Lord Guardian, it would definitely be a ceremony unique to spirit beasts. It would not be a wedding banquet like humans. Now, everything was for the new wife. To be precise, it was for Duanmuyu. Then, Lord Guardian, can you introduce our Lord Guardian's wife to everyone? A spirit beast asked curiously. All right, I'll satisfy your curiosity. The handsome man looked at Duanmuyu with admiration and said in a proud tone, She was originally a disciple of the archaic alliance's Yiling sect. Her name is Duanmuyu. This time, she came here by chance and was originally going to be a human's tribute. However, I suddenly realized that her physique and mental cultivation method were very compatible with mine. It just so happened that I wanted to test the legendary dual cultivation technique, so she became my wife. I see. When Linny heard this, he suddenly realized why Duanmuyu would appear in this place. However, he was very curious about Duanmuyu's current state. This strange woman with a masculine temperament was actually obediently becoming a bride and had no intention of resisting at all. Chapter 5250. This was Lin Yi's first reaction, and it was also the most likely situation. However, he carefully observed Duanmuyu's demeanor and behavior. There was no difference from before. At most, there was a little more uneasiness and shyness. This was a matter of course. It was impossible for anyone to not be shy when they became someone else's bride, even if it was an extraordinary woman like Duanmuyu. However, how could Duanmuyu really be willing to marry a spirit beast? Could it be the legendary love at first sight? Linny was confused, but at this moment, Duanmuyu was next to the handsome man. Even if he was puzzled, he did not dare to go over and ask. After all, the handsome man was an existence that could contend with the brain-eating bug head-on. If Lin Yi's spirit were to go over rashly, it was very likely that he would be noticed by the other party. By then, it would be difficult for him to escape. What's more, Lin Yi had no time to care about Duanmuyu's business now. It was more important to find a way to solve the current predicament. If it weren't for this unexpected trip, if he didn't hear the words of the brain-eating bug, Lin Yi might continue to look for Cold and the others step by step. However, he had changed his mind now. If he could not ensure that he could hide himself, even if he found Cold and the others, it would be useless. It might even make the situation worse because the brain-eating bug would definitely chase after him. Unless he could cut off the source of the brain-eating bug's discovery, which was the handsome man in front of him who claimed to be able to control everything. Unfortunately, this was an absolute false proposition. If Linny had the ability to deal with this handsome man, then he would not need to be so afraid of the brain-eating bug. After all, the two of them were at the same level. At the same time, the warm atmosphere of celebration continued. Under the instigation of the spirit beasts, the handsome man even crossed cups with Duanmuyu in public. To Lin Yi's surprise, Duanmuyu actually did it obediently and did not show the slightest displeasure. This was really strange. The wedding banquet did not last too long. It was not that these spirit beasts were self-restrained. It was because the time had come, and they began a new round of collective uproar in the bridal chamber. In the bridal chamber. In the bridal chamber. Lin Yi blushed with shame. To be honest, he was also quite interested in this matter. If it weren't for the fear of being discovered and the urgency of the current situation, he wouldn't even mind going in and joining in the fun. He was very curious about how Duanmuyu, a strange woman with a man's heart, would behave in the bridal chamber. No matter what, it must be very interesting. You're having fun in the bridal room? Well, since it's a traditional human ceremony, let's do it in the bridal chamber. The handsome man readily accepted the advice. However, just as they escorted the handsome man and Duanmuyu to the luxurious tent at the back, a very strange sound suddenly came from a corner that no one paid attention to. To be precise, it was a hysterical scream. The source of the scream came from Fei Yangming, but it wasn't his fault. Anyone who was dragged into the water by a monster like the Kappa and woke up in the middle of a large group of ferocious spirit beasts would scream instinctively, unless he was a mute. However, when Fei Yangsheng came back to his senses, he even had the heart to kill himself. If he didn't scream, with his hidden position, the possibility of these spirit beasts discovering him was not high. It was unlikely that these spiritual beasts, who were immersed in the melody of the nuptial chamber, would notice him, but now he had become the only focus of attention. Human? The group of spirit beasts looked at each other in dismay. If it was any other place, they would have swarmed forward and taken it. However, this was not the case here. This was the Lord Protector's territory. Only the Lord Protector had the final say in everything. If they acted on their own, the only outcome would be death. The handsome man's face also showed a little surprise. However, his eyes only stayed on Fei Yangming for less than a moment, and then he moved away, faintly saying, "Patrol bee, here." Dozens of patrol bees suddenly flew up in the field. How did he get in? The handsome man asked in a mysterious tone. All the patrol bees fell silent. Today was a big day, and so many spirit beasts were gathered in one place. They absolutely did not dare to let down their guard. Every single patrolling bee was already doing their best to stay alert. They had already done everything they could. From the beginning to the end, they did not relax for even a moment. They thought that everything was foolproof, but they did not expect to miss a living person. How is this possible? All right, I'll cut myself in half, the handsome man said indifferently. At first, the spiritual beasts did not understand what he meant. It was only when the patrol bees began to kill each other that they finally understood. The so-called suicide of half of the patrol bees meant that half of the patrol bees had to kill each other. As expected, the Lord Protector was as strict as ever. Fei Yangxing's scalp went numb as he watched the patrol bees turn into corpses and fall from the sky. Until now, he still had not figured out the situation. He did not even notice Duanmu Yu's existence. He only knew that he was dead this time. That man was so cruel and merciless to his own subordinates. As an intruder, he would not be able to live past today. Sure enough, before the patrol bees had finished killing each other, the handsome man had already made a judgment on Fei Yangxing's fate. Kill him. If it was any other time, even if a human cultivator was caught by them, they would not kill him because they still had to offer human tributes to the Lord. However, it was different today. Today was the handsome man's wedding. This reckless human dared to disturb his wedding. Of course, he had to die. As soon as the handsome man finished speaking, the spirit beast closest to him picked Fei Yangxing up and was about to snap his neck without any hesitation. Fei Yangxing was scared out of his wits. He could not even scream at that moment and could only struggle with all his might in vain. Linny hesitated when he saw this scene. He was worried about Long Long and the others. At this moment, even Long Long and the others could not solve the crisis. If he rashly rescued Fei Yangxing, not to mention that there were so many spirit beasts present, especially powerful existences at the same level as the brain-eating bug, the success rate was very low. Even if he succeeded by a fluke, Lin Yi would inevitably be exposed. How could he deal with the next crisis? Chapter 52-51. Just as Lin Yi was thinking about taking a risk, Duanmu Yu suddenly spoke from afar. Wait. All the spirit beasts turned to look at her. This was the first time the new guardian wife had spoken. The handsome man asked, "Madam, do you have something to say? Since it's a marriage, I can't leave out my family." "Let him go. He's my family," Duanmu said. Duanmu said. When she said this, her expression was very calm. No one knew what she was thinking. Family. The handsome man frowned. Of course, he did not want to let Fei Yangxing go so easily. However, since Duanmu rarely spoke, especially in a public place like this, for the sake of the future, he had to give her face. He could only say, "Fine, but you have to tell me how you got in here." As soon as this was said, Kappa, who was in the corner, was shocked. If Fei Yangxing told him the whole story, he would be dead. Fei Yangxing's mind was blank at this moment, but he was not completely stunned. He stammered, I was accidentally swallowed by a man-eating flower. I struggled with all my might. I don't know why. I woke up and ended up here. I arrived here without knowing anything." The handsome man smiled pleasantly, but his face immediately darkened. "Nonsense. How could you break free from the entanglement of the Bingdi man-eating flower with your strength? Besides, even if you were lucky enough to escape, you should have landed in the 100 Herb Garden, not this inner garden. For the sake of your own life, I think it's better for you to tell me the truth." I. Fei Yangxing wanted to give up Lin Yi in a moment of desperation. Since he did not see Lin Yi here, he thought that Lin Yi was either dead or had escaped. No matter which one it was, it had nothing to do with him. However, at this moment, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration. "I really don't know what happened. I only know that when I was struggling in a daze, I seemed to have seen a big white insect. It had a pair of wings. It didn't seem to have wings. I really can't remember. Maybe it was a dream. When I woke up, I was already here. I'm telling the truth. Brain-eating bug? The handsome man did not care much at first, but when he heard those words, his expression suddenly became solemn. He could ignore everything else, but when it came to the temperamental brain-eater, he could not take it lightly. Upon hearing that, the other spirit beasts came to a sudden realization. No wonder this human could appear in this place without anyone noticing. Even so many patrol bees did not notice him. It turned out to be the brain-eating insects doing, which made sense now. Aside from the brain-eating worms, no other existence could hide from their senses and transport a living person in. Because of this preconceived notion, even the handsome man subconsciously chose to believe it and could not help but mutter, throwing a living person in for no reason? What is this guy trying to do? Is he trying to show off to me? I vaguely remember that the insect said something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think it said something like a greeting gift. Fei Yangxing added carefully. Greeting gift? Humph, what a greeting gift. The handsome man had no more doubts now. He did not care about Fei Yangxing's life or death at all, so he immediately ignored it and prepared to enter the bridal chamber. Kappa, who was in the corner, finally breathed a sigh of relief when he saw this. This was a walk on the edge of life and death. However, what puzzled him was that he was the one who sneaked Fei Yangxing in, and it had nothing to do with the brain-eating bug. Moreover, he had never seen the brain-eating bug, so how did this guy inexplicably link it to the brain-eating bug? Little did he know that all of this came from Lin Yi's divine sense transmission. Fei Yangxing's words were just a repetition. If he did not bring out the brain-eating bug, it would not be so easy to get away with it today. The spirit beasts surrounded the handsome man and Duanmuyu again as they walked toward the luxurious tent. Unexpectedly, Duanmuyu suddenly stopped and said, "Before we go to the bridal chamber, I still want to talk to my family for a while. I won't have this chance in the future. I hope you can fulfill my wish." Then, okay, but don't let me wait too long. The handsome man was unexpectedly easy to talk to. Although he showed his cruel and indifferent side just now, at least he was good to Duanmuyu, his new wife. After that, the handsome man immediately led the spirit beasts to continue drinking and reveling. Duanmuyu called Fei Yangxing, whose legs were weak, over and continued to walk toward the luxurious tent. "The four of you stay outside." Duanmuyu ordered the four maids who followed closely behind. But the four maids looked at each other. But what? From today onwards, I am your mistress. Don't my words count? Duanmuyu put on the airs of a mistress. This servant doesn't dare. The four maids quickly nodded. They had all seen the handsome man's favor for Duanmuyu. If they really offended this new mistress, none of them would be able to live in the future. Duanmuyu immediately walked into the large tent with Fei Yangxing. The inside was luxuriously dressed, but Duanmuyu did not even look at it. She turned to look at Fei Yangxing and said, "Tell me, what's the matter with you? Didn't I just say it?" Fei Yangxing grinned. "You don't want to say it? Forget it then. I was thinking of finding a chance for you to escape, but it seems that there's no need for that now." Duanmuyu said indifferently, "No, no, no. Please don't." Fei Yangxing panicked and stammered. But what? Duanmuyu looked at him. "But I don't dare to say it." Fei Yangxing said bitterly. "Don't dare to say it? Why don't you dare to say it?" Duanmuyu's interest was piqued. She only felt that Fei Yangxing was abnormal, so she asked on a whim. At this time, Lin Yi's voice suddenly sounded in her mind. "Because I'm here, he doesn't dare to say it." Lin Yi? Duanmuyu was shocked. Although she did not have much contact with Lin Yi, she definitely had a deep impression of him. She recognized this voice as soon as she heard it. But the problem was, where was Lin Yi? At this moment, apart from her and Fei Yangxing, there was no one else in the luxurious tent. As the eldest senior sister of the Yiling sect, Duanmuyu's perception was outstanding among experts of the same level. If Lin Yi was really here, how could she not sense him at all? Chapter 52. Duamuyu was shocked again, but she still could not find any trace of Lin Yi. She could not help but look like she had seen a ghost. She looked at Fei Yongxing and asked, "Where is he?" "I don't know," Fei Yongxing said with a bitter face. He had the same reaction when he heard Lin Yi's voice for the first time. However, he was almost scared stiff by the spirit beasts around him, so he did not show it on his face. Otherwise, he would have given himself away. Then this is... Duamuyu did not know what to say for a while. Lin Yi's image in her mind was indeed unfathomable, but it should not be this unfathomable. She could only hear his voice, but not see him. What the hell was this? Senior Sister Duanmu, do you think this is the manifestation of a ghost? Fei Yongxing suddenly said mysteriously. The manifestation of a ghost? Duanmuyu was shocked when she heard this, but she immediately showed a disapproving expression. The theory of gods and ghosts was far more popular in the cultivation world than in the secular world. Although many people did not believe in it, there were many believers. Many things were half true and half false. Even the most powerful and authoritative big shots could not explain it, which further confirmed the possibility of the theory of gods and ghosts. Of course, Duamuyu did not believe in this. Not only did she not believe it, but most of the elite cultivators also disdained it. For cultivators, ghosts were the spirit. It's true. Fei Yongxing believed it without a doubt. He said seriously, "I didn't believe it at first, but I had to believe it. Otherwise, there would be no way to explain what happened today. Senior Sister Duanmu, do you know how I came in?" "How did you come in? Isn't it because of the brain-eating bug?" Duanmuyu asked curiously. "Of course not. I don't even know what a brain-eating bug is. What I just said was taught to me by Senior Lin Yi, one sentence at a time." Fei Yongxing smiled bitterly and shook his head. Seeing that Duanmuyu was getting more and more confused, he said, "I just said that I was swallowed by the twin piranha flower, but the one who saved me was not a brain-eating worm, but Senior Lin Yi. After he saved me, we fell into a paradise filled with rare elixirs, but I was careless and fell into the hands of a river monster. When I woke up, I inexplicably appeared here. What does this have to do with ghosts?" Duanmuyu did not understand. "Senior Sister Duanmu, think about it carefully. Since that terrifying river monster attacked me, it definitely won't let Senior Lin Yi off. Even if Senior Lin Yi is very strong, he's not invincible, right? Moreover, if Senior Lin Yi didn't become a ghost, how could we only hear his voice and not see him?" Fei Yongxing deduced with a serious face. Duanmuyu was speechless after listening to his theory. This was a common problem for many people. Once they encountered some problems that they could not understand, they would naturally think about the mysterious side, and the more they thought about it, the more they could not extricate themselves. I have to say, Senior Lin Yi is really kind. He didn't forget to save me even though he has become a ghost. After I escape this disaster, I must burn more paper money for him. Humans and ghosts are different. This is the only thing I can do for him, Fei Yongxing said with a sigh. Humans and ghosts are different. Duanmuyu almost burst out laughing when she heard this. She thought about it and said, "I think you're thinking too much. It's really strange to only hear his voice but not see him, but it's not completely inexplicable. I suspect that Lin Yi's spirit is here. Don't forget, he is said to have a spirit body." "A spirit body?" Fei Yongxing was stunned for a moment before he reacted. "Oh right, no one has mentioned it for so long, I almost forgot about it. Haha, I really can't hide it from Miss Duanmuyu." Lin Yi finally showed his spirit body in front of the two. "Senior Lin." Fei Yongxing immediately showed a surprised and happy expression, but only he knew how much of it was real and how much was fake. A hint of joy flashed across Duanmuyu's face, but she quickly calmed down and said with a sigh, "I really didn't expect you to have such amazing skills. It seems that you are indeed from a different world from us. Although you are not a ghost, to a certain extent, you are not much different from a ghost." Miss Duanmuyu's words hit the nail on the head. "I admire you." Lin Yi did not deny it. As a woman, he had to admit that Duanmuyu was indeed a very discerning and insightful person, which was far above most men. Her words had clearly revealed Lin Yi's origin and essence. "Brother Lin, you flatter me." Duan Muyu shook her head with a wry smile. Anyone with a little discerning eye could see that Lin Yi was not ordinary. In contrast, she should be considered a hindsight. Lin Yi smiled and looked up and down at Duan Muyu. He suddenly asked, "Miss Duan Muyu, what do you think?" This question was a little abrupt. If it was someone else, they might not be able to react for a while. But Duan Muyu was very clear about Lin Yi's question. She smiled bitterly and said, "I have no choice, that's all." "I guess so." Lin Yi nodded. With Duan Muyu's temperament and style, it was impossible for her to marry a spirit beast willingly. The only explanation was that she had no choice but to compromise. After a moment of silence, Duan Muyu forced a smile and said, "Forget it. It is a rare surprise for me to be able to meet Brother Lin in this damn place. I am satisfied. Oh yes, Brother Lin, if it is difficult for you to go out like this, you might as well try to hide here for a while. I will think of a way to send you out of here safely. It can be considered as a repayment for your previous kindness." If it were any other woman in Duan Muyu's situation, they wouldn't be this calm even if they didn't cry to the heavens. However, Lin Yi could clearly feel that Duan Muyu hadn't given up just like that. It was just that he didn't know what she was thinking. "Are you ready to accept your fate?" Lin Yi probed. "Accept my fate?" Duan Muyu sighed and looked at Lin Yi with a complicated expression. "Maybe. I will think of a way to struggle, but the possibility of success is not high. If it doesn't work when the time comes, I can only accept my fate." She wasn't that close with Lin Yi, and Fei Yangsheng was there as well. She was already being very honest with Lin Yi, not to mention that Fei Yangsheng was there. She wouldn't go any further than that, and there was no need for her to say it out loud. Lin Yi thought for a while and suddenly suggested, "Why don't we join forces?" Chapter 52-53. Duamu Yu still shook her head and refused. "No, I appreciate Brother Lin's kindness. I just said that I will find a way to send you out safely first. You really don't have to do this for me. Frankly, even if we join forces, we have no chance of winning in front of him. It's meaningless." "Senior Lin, since Senior Sister Duanmu has said so, I think we should forget it. Maybe without our help, she will be more like a fish in water?" Fei Yangsheng couldn't help but interrupt. Lin Yi's suggestion had given him quite a fright. As far as he was concerned, it was suicide. He'd be the first one to die, since he was the weakest of them all. However, Lin Yi ignored him and said directly to Duanmu, "To be honest, I want to join forces with you not just for you, but for myself. If there is a chance to get rid of the Protector, I must try it anyway." "What? You want to get rid of him?" This time, not only Fei Yangsheng, but even Duanmu was stunned. She was thinking about how to escape at most. She did not expect Lin Yi to want to get rid of the Protector directly. Isn't this a bit too crazy? Do you know what his strength is? Duanmu quickly wanted to popularize the general knowledge to Lin Yi. She had been in contact with the Protector for so many days. Although she had not seen the other party fight seriously, the tip of the iceberg she knew was enough to dispel this unrealistic and stupid idea. This kind of monster was not an existence that cultivators at their level could deal with at all. The difference in strength between them was too great. "I don't know, but I probably have some idea because I have fought with the brain-eating bug," Lin Yi said. Since the Protector and the brain-eating bug were at the same level, their strength was naturally not much different. At most, there was a difference in the ability they were good at. "You have fought with the brain-eating bug? You can escape unscathed?" Duan Muyu was stunned again. Although she had been staying in the big tent, she was clear about what had happened since the commotion outside was so loud. She suddenly came to a realization and said, No wonder it specifically wanted to track you. No wonder you would have such a dangerous idea. If I'm not wrong, you're mainly doing this for Cold and the others, right?" "Yes." Lin Yi nodded. With his endless variety of abilities, even if the brain-eating bug and the Protector joined hands to hunt him down, he wouldn't need to worry too much. But Cold and the others couldn't handle this level of danger, so he had to make the first move. "You're a good person, better than most of the people I've met." Duanmu looked at Lin Yi deeply. Ugh, Lin Yi couldn't help but sweat. What the hell was going on here? He hadn't even confessed yet, Why was he being called a good guy already? But even so, I still think it is unreliable and the chance is slim. Duan Muyu suddenly changed the topic. Even if Lin Yi could escape unscathed from the brain-eating bug, it did not mean that he had the confidence to face the protector, let alone kill him. Duan Muyu suddenly changed the topic. Even if Lin Yi could escape unscathed from the brain-eating bug, it did not mean that he had the confidence to face the protector, let alone kill the protector. Lin Yi didn't give up. If it's just me, I might only have a 1% chance. But with your help, my chances will increase by 10 times, to 1 in 10. 1/10? Duan Muyu frowned. The success rate is not high, but I think it is worth a try. Of course, if you think the success rate of your plan is higher than if we join forces, then follow your plan. You don't have to force it, Lin Yi said sincerely. Duan Muyu was not impulsive. She really thought about it carefully and finally came to a conclusion. The success rate of my plan is not as high as yours, but there is an advantage. The risk of failure is far less than if we join forces. If I behave sensibly, I will at most be imprisoned. At least, it will not be a problem to linger on. If I join forces with you, I will definitely die if I fail. That is true. If you join forces with me, you will either succeed or die trying. There is no third possibility. Lin Yi nodded. If a woman was simply running away from a marriage, her husband wouldn't go so far as to kill her. But if this woman was plotting to murder her husband, then she would definitely die. With the protector's strength, if he really failed, Lin Yi could still escape. But Duan Muyu would definitely die. Duan Muyu was still weighing the two options while Fei Yangsheng looked at her eagerly. He silently prayed that Duan Muyu would not agree. Otherwise, it would not only be Duan Muyu but also him. Fortunately, the inclination of Duan Muyu's words was very obvious. As the saying goes, where there is life, there is hope. It was better to keep a useful body than to lose one's life on impulse. Since Duan Muyu analyzed it so clearly, she must be a rational person. After a while, Duan Muyu finally made up her mind. Okay, I will join forces with you. Fei Yangsheng almost knelt down when he heard this. Although Duan Muyu was a rational person, he was wrong about one thing. This woman was not rational at all. Have you thought it through? Lin Yi asked. Although he was the one who made this proposal, to be honest, he did not expect Duan Muyu to agree. After all, this was an extremely dangerous decision for Duan Muyu. Don't worry, I've thought it through very clearly. Although I can still keep my life if I follow my own method, I don't want to live as someone else's dual cultivation forbidden land. I might as well die, Duan Muyu said straightforwardly. Okay, Lin Yi nodded. Since Duan Muyu had this awareness, it could not be better for him. If Duan Muyu really did not agree, he would have a headache. Then what plan do you have? Let's quickly come up with it. Duan Muyu immediately got to the point. However, before Lin Yi had time to answer, he suddenly disappeared into thin air and turned into his primordial spirit state to hide in an inconspicuous corner. Before Duan Muyu and Fei Yangsheng could react, the handsome man's voice came from outside the tent. Madam, are you done talking to your family? Following the voice, the handsome man walked in. This was his territory, and it was already a rare favor for him to allow Duan Muyu to speak to Fei Yangsheng alone. No matter when he wanted to enter, even Duan Muyu couldn't be the slightest bit careless. Chapter 52-54. Send him out? Frankly speaking, with his level of strength, even if he were to be sent out, he would become a tribute sooner or later. However, since Madam has spoken, let's do it this way. I'll get the patrol bee to bring him out. The handsome man agreed. Thank you, my king. Thank you, my king. Fei Yangsheng was instantly overjoyed. He had thought that he was dead meat. He never thought that there would be such a thoughtful arrangement. Duan Muyu was such a good person. Fei Yangsheng was quickly brought out by the patrol bee. Soon after, the other spirit beasts squeezed in impatiently. They were still excitedly waiting to make a scene in the bridal chamber. However, with a casual order from the handsome man, the spirit beasts who could not transform into human form retreated. The only ones who could enter the tent were spirit beasts who had transformed into human form. In the face of such a situation, no matter how carefree Duan Muyu appeared on the surface, she still felt very uncomfortable. Making a scene in the bridal chamber would definitely require some intimate actions with the other party. She felt disgusted as she had never been intimate with any man before. However, in this situation, she had no choice but to bite the bullet and cooperate. She could not possibly fall out with them on the spot. Even if she wanted to court death, this was not the way to do it. As expected, the spirit beasts started to clamor for the bride and groom to kiss each other in public. After all, they were not humans. In this aspect, they were very open-minded. Duan Muyu could not avoid this no matter how hard she tried. As she watched the spirit beasts getting closer and closer, Duan Muyu closed her eyes and steeled her heart. Just as she was about to throw caution to the wind, a loud explosion suddenly rang out from the crowd. A few spirit beasts who had transformed into human forms were blasted away on the spot. The entire luxurious tent was instantly thrown into chaos. What's going on? The human-shaped spirit beasts who had been sent sprawling on the ground were extremely flustered. Some of them were so frightened that they immediately reverted to their original forms. The scene was extremely chaotic. No one could have imagined that such an accident would happen on such an occasion. Who would be so daring as to cause trouble in the Lord Protector's bridal chamber? The spirit beasts were at a loss of what to do. However, as the master, the handsome man was not the least bit flustered. He had already locked onto the source of the loud explosion. His expression was extremely ugly as he said, "Explosive flame fruit." That's right. The source of the explosion just now was the specialty of the 100 Herb Garden, the exploding flame fruit that could explode if one was not careful. All the spirit beasts were speechless. Before today's banquet, the Lord Protector had shown them a special favor by allowing them to go to the 100 Herb Garden to collect some rare spirit herbs as a return gift. This was a very rare opportunity, so they naturally wouldn't stand on ceremony. It wasn't strange for some of the spirit beasts to collect the exploding flame fruits, but no one expected such a situation to occur at this time. The explosive blaze fruit was extremely unstable and would explode at the slightest pressure. It was obvious that everyone had accidentally squeezed it when they were making a ruckus, resulting in this awkward and chaotic accident. Explosive flame fruits would obviously be. The handsome man's face darkened completely. If the previous incident had not happened, he would not have minded getting the other spiritual beasts to cheer him up. After all, this was a common human custom. However, he was no longer in the mood at this moment. An explosive flame fruit had ruined his rare good mood to the extreme in an instant. The explosive flame fruit had helped her out of her predicament. After all, this was a human custom. However, he was no longer in the mood. An explosive flame fruit had ruined his rare good mood to the extreme. Duan Muyu breathed a sigh of relief as she watched the noisy scene unfold. The explosive flame fruit had really helped her out of her predicament, and she couldn't help but thank Lin Yi in her heart. Of course, she had to thank Lin Yi. After all, those spirit beasts weren't stupid, and none of them would dare to bring something as dangerous as the explosive flame fruit into the bridal chamber. The culprit behind the explosive flame fruit was Lin Yi. However, Lin Yi had been very careful. He had been hiding in a corner while maintaining his primordial spirit form. He had only stealthily slid the explosive flame fruit under their feet. Otherwise, with the handsome man's senses, he would have been exposed if he had appeared in his primordial spirit form. The spirit beasts were very sensible. Once they saw that the protector was in a bad mood, not only did they quickly escape from the luxurious tent, they did not even dare to stay outside for fear that they would accidentally become scapegoats. One by one, they hurriedly squeezed their way up the stairs and left this troublesome place. Unbeknownst to them, the handsome man's mood was not as bad as they had imagined. Once he and Duan Muyu were the only ones left in the tent, his expression quickly eased and he said gently, "The hindrances have all left. Madam, let's begin our dual cultivation." Dual cultivation was the main reason why he had made up his mind to marry Duan Muyu. Now that they had skipped the bridal chamber and were about to enter the bridal chamber, he could not wait any longer. Duan Muyu was startled when she heard this. She was just rejoicing that she had escaped from the nuptial chamber. She didn't expect that this guy was going to go further in the nuptial chamber. He was serious. What's wrong? The handsome man looked at her in surprise. This, isn't it too fast? Duan Muyu racked her brains to delay it. She had not discussed the specific plan with Lin Yi until now. What should she do if she was forced to enter the bridal chamber as soon as she arrived? Too fast? How can that be? We've held a proper wedding banquet. According to tradition, it's time to go through the formalities. Isn't this a very normal thing? How can it be too fast? The handsome man tried to dissuade them. But, Duan Muyu was so anxious that she did not know what to say. In the end, she finally had a flash of inspiration and said, I still don't know how to dual cultivate. Oh, that's easy. Later, you just need to adjust the vital energy in your body. You don't have to worry about anything else. I'll take charge of everything. The handsome man smiled. But Duan Muyu still wanted to delay it a little more. No matter what, she had to at least think of a way to discuss it with Lin Yi. No buts. Come with me. The handsome man's face darkened. Although his tolerance for Duan Muyu was much higher than that of those spirit beasts, it was still very limited. No one could change what he had decided on, and it was the same for Duan Muyu as his new wife. Duan Muyu did not dare to be long-winded anymore. If she said no at this time, the other party might fall out with her on the spot. There would be no room for negotiation. The handsome man walked towards the back of the tent with his hands behind his back. Duan Muyu was at a loss for a moment. At this moment, Lin Yi's voice suddenly sounded in her mind. Follow him and act according to the situation. Chapter 52-55. What's wrong? Aren't we leaving? Duan Muyu hurriedly said to divert his attention. It's nothing. Let's go. The handsome man glanced at her and felt that he might have been overthinking. This was his base camp. Who would be so bold as to stay here and play tricks? Lin Yi secretly felt a lingering fear when he saw this scene. This fellow was indeed not easy to fool. He had tried his best to send a voice transmission with his divine sense, but he did not expect to be discovered. Fortunately, Duan Muyu's reaction was fast enough. Otherwise, he might really have been caught. After all, this tent was not big. Even if Lin Yi transformed into his essence soul form, and even if his essence soul level was far above the other party's due to his main body's strength, it was unlikely that he could completely hide from the other party's perception if the other party really searched carefully. The handsome man led the way through the hall and walked directly to the back of the tent. Duan Muyu was immediately stunned. There was no way out in front of him. It was directly blocked by the tent. What was he doing? Unexpectedly, when he walked all the way to the tent, the handsome man did not stop at all. He did not lift the tent at all, and just passed through it as if he had disappeared into thin air. Come in. The handsome man's voice sounded out of thin air. Duan Muyu frowned slightly, but she still walked in the same way as the other party. Indeed, she did not encounter any obstruction and directly passed through the tent. Duan Muyu was stunned. The scene in front of her was exactly the same as before. Other than the direction being reversed, be it the spatial layout or the scenery, everything was exactly the same as before. There was almost no difference at all. Welcome to another world, the handsome man said with a smile. Another world? What do you mean? Duan Muyu was puzzled. Hee, you will understand when you go out and take a look. The handsome man smiled and personally led Duan Muyu forward. When they walked out of the tent, Duan Muyu was completely shocked when she saw the scene in front of her. She was very sure that she did not go back, but she saw the exact same scene as before. It was just like the tent. There was no difference at all. It was just that the direction had been reversed. Apart from that, if there was anything else different, it would be that this place was completely empty, and there were no signs of spirit beasts. I don't understand. Duan Muyu shook her head. If it was anyone else in her position, they would not be able to understand it immediately. She was very sure that all of this was not an illusion, nor was it a carefully crafted scene. Perhaps, as the handsome man had said, this was another world, another twin world. It's okay. You'll understand slowly. The handsome man did not intend to continue explaining. Instead, he said impatiently, there's only the two of us here. No one will disturb us. Let's begin our dual cultivation. Duan Muyu was a little hesitant, but when he recalled Lin Yi's words just now, he secretly gritted his teeth and braced himself to feign civility. At the same time, Lin Yi, who was hiding in the dark, more or less figured out something. This space gave people a very mysterious feeling. Every layout was exactly the same as the outside world. The only difference was that the direction had been reversed. In his knowledge, there was only one possibility that could explain this situation in front of him: a mirror. If he guessed correctly, this was a world that existed in a mirror. This was the only reasonable inference, but it still shocked Lin Yi because he had not found a mirror at all since he came in. He did not find anything similar to a mirror. If he used common sense to deduce, the place where the mirror world was connected to the real world was where the mirror was. In that case, the mirror could only be that seemingly ordinary tint. Could it be that the root of all this was that tint? Could it be that the tint was a spatial artifact similar to the jade pendant? If he did not figure out this matter, it would inevitably have a huge impact on the next action. It might even directly lead to failure. In any case, he could not ignore it. When Linny thought of this, he quickly went back to verify it. It turned out that there was no problem with the tint itself. It was really just an ordinary tint. Since it was not the effect of the tint, there were only two possible explanations. Either the artifact that could create the mirror world was on the handsome man, or it was simply the handsome man's own ability. If it was only the former, it would be fine. If it was the latter, this guy's strength was really a bit too strong. For a moment, Lin Yi could not help but feel a trace of regret. The degree of difficulty of this guardian might be far above the brain-eating worm. It was easier said than done to kill such a guy on the spur of the moment. When he told Duanmuyu before, he said that as long as Duanmuyu cooperated, there would be a 1 in 10 chance of success. Now it seemed that he was a little too optimistic. Fortunately, this mirror world was highly consistent with the outside world. Linny did not find anything wrong. He did not feel any discomfort, and there were no signs of his strength being limited. Most importantly, he could still freely enter and exit the tent on both sides, which meant that this mirror world had not shown any harm so far. This was very important as it was directly related to the life and death of himself and Duanmuyu. Lin Yi did not dare to be careless. After testing several times in a row, he finally felt relieved. No matter what, he must not lose the only exit to return to the real world. However, while Lin Yi was repeatedly testing, the handsome man, who had already walked out of the tent with Duanmuyu, suddenly turned back. At the same time, there was a smug sneer on his face. "Come out. Since you have entered my moon's mirror, don't think of escaping my perception. Don't struggle in vain. No matter how much you struggle, it's just a waste of energy." Duanmuyu, who was behind him, was shocked when she heard this. Although she did not know where Lin Yi was hiding, there was no doubt that this guy had clearly found Lin Yi's traces. Once discovered, Lin Yi would definitely die. No matter how high Duanmuyu's evaluation of Lin Yi was, she believed it without a doubt. After all, the difference in strength between them was too great. They were not on the same level at all. Unfortunately, Lin Yi did not show up obediently. There was no movement around him at all. Chapter 52-56. What he said was not wrong at all. Although he did not catch the thief on the spot, he basically caught the thief and the goods together. Under normal circumstances, if it was anyone else, they would have taken the initiative to show themselves. Then, whether to escape or fight would be another matter. However, if he still had to hide his identity, then it would be a little embarrassing. Duanmuyu's heart turned cold. She was thinking the same thing. Next, Lin Yi would definitely appear, and the two of them would work together to fight with their lives on the line. As for whether or not they would be able to fight with their lives on the line, it would be up to fate. In the end, the surroundings were still dead silent, and Lin Yi still did not show up. To be able to sneak into my tent in front of so many spirit beasts without anyone noticing and hide right under everyone's eyes, this is not simple. I thought that someone who could do this was at least a great figure. I didn't expect you to be so tasteless. It seems that I really overestimated you. The handsome man was still sneering, but he did not show any signs of being anxious at all. Instead, he was calm and confident, giving people the feeling that everything was under his control. However, no matter how he provoked Lin Yi, he would not show up no matter what. Once he showed up, he would either die or be seriously injured. Lin Yi knew this very well. If he maintained the state of his primordial spirit and did not move, the other party would not be able to find out his details for a while. Instead, it would be safer. Of course, the safest way was to find a way to escape from this mirror world. As long as he could escape, he would be like a fish in the sea and a bird in the sky. No matter how strong the handsome man was, he would not be able to catch up with him. However, in that case, Duamu Yu would really be helpless. Lin Yi could not do such a shameless act of betraying his teammate. Therefore, Lin Yi decided to bide his time and deal with all changes by remaining unchanged. Idiot! The corners of the handsome man's mouth curled into a sarcastic smile. The entire mirror world suddenly turned upside down without warning, and then returned to its original state in an instant. Even Duan Muyu, who had a calm mind, was shocked by such a drastic change. Although from her point of view, she only felt a slight shake and did not suffer any substantial damage, the shift of her center of gravity just now was real. No matter how fast her reaction was, she could not adjust it. As long as she was in this mirror world, she would inevitably reveal her flaws. The handsome man wanted to rely on this move to force Lin Yi out. Unfortunately, the result was very disappointing. Faced with such a sudden change, Lin Yi actually didn't have the slightest opening. It was simply strange. Unbeknownst to him, Lin Yi was merely a wisp of his soul core that was floating in the air, and he didn't have the ability to shift his center of gravity at all. No matter how this method of his was able to catch Lin Yi off guard, Lin Yi was innately immune to it. So what could he do? No? Did he escape? The handsome man himself was taken aback. He didn't really lock the position of Lin Yi. He just perceived that there was such an intruder through some clues, but he didn't expect Lin Yi to escape so fast. However, he didn't give up. He immediately used his divine awareness to perceive everything around him carefully. This was the mirror world that he had created by himself. Every inch of soil, every grass and every tree was under his control. In the past, he didn't need to use his divine awareness at all, but this time he didn't believe it. He didn't believe that anyone could escape from the mirror world in front of him. Lin Yi immediately felt an extremely subtle fluctuation of divine awareness. He was hiding in the corner of the big tent at the moment, not too far away from the other party. If he was not careful, he would expose his flaws. If it was an ordinary gold core stage spirit beast, Lin Yi didn't have to worry about it. He didn't have any gains in other aspects this year, but in terms of soul core, he was absolutely reborn. Especially after the strength of soul core stagnated, he put more energy into studying divine awareness skills. In this aspect, his ability could be said to have improved by leaps and bounds. Not only was he able to freely switch between the state of soul core, half soul, and soul core, but he also had a lot of experience in other small skills. These small skills seemed to be simple and basic, but in fact, they were very useful, such as soul concealment. The so-called soul concealment was not really to make the soul disappear and invisible, but to reduce the existence of the soul core as much as possible. The state of the soul core was difficult for most people to detect. When the existence of the soul core was reduced to the extreme, it could achieve a concealment effect that was almost invisible. In particular, the quality of Lin Yi's divine awareness was far above that of the other party. Even if the other party's divine awareness was detected, he could also deceive it, and the concealment was even more seamless. If not, he would have been discovered by so many spirit beasts before. However, now that he was facing a handsome man, far from those spirit beasts, Lin Yi didn't dare to take it lightly. He tried as much as possible to reduce the existence of his soul core to the extreme, trying to find a way to integrate with the surrounding environment. Sure enough, when the handsome man's divine awareness swept over him for the first time, he couldn't find Lin Yi on the spot. After carefully scanning the surroundings, he still found nothing. However, before Lin Yi could breathe a sigh of relief, the handsome man seemed to suddenly notice something. His divine awareness once again covered the area, and the focus was on the area where Linny was. Oh no! Sensing the fluctuation of the other party's divine awareness, Lin-Yi suddenly felt a chill in his heart. He knew that the other party had already discovered that something was wrong. At this rate, he would be discovered sooner or later. In fact, the flaw was not on Lin-Yi. His soul core concealment was now quite good, and even the handsome man wouldn't be able to easily detect it. The real flaw was in this mirror world. The key to concealment of the soul core was to integrate with the surrounding environment, and everything here was the work of the handsome man. How could it be easy to integrate with the environment and deceive the other party? Found you! The handsome man suddenly snorted coldly and struck out a palm in the direction of Lin-Yi's soul core. At first glance, it didn't seem to have any shocking power, but the space that was locked on by it shattered with a bang. No matter how strong an existence was, once they were affected, they would die without a doubt. This scene made Duan Muyu's heart jump, and his heart sank even more. The handsome man was the creator of this mirror world, and he was the master here. How could he fight him? Linny can't be dead, right? Duan Muyu's heart was filled with panic. With her ability, she couldn't detect Lin-Yi. At first, she also thought that Lin-Yi must have seen that the situation was not good and escaped. However, the handsome man would not attack for no reason, so Lin-Yi must have been discovered. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Lin-Yi's voice suddenly sounded in her mind. Don't worry, I'm very lucky. I won't die so easily. This time, because Linny was hiding in her body, she was much more confident than before. Unfortunately, the other party's next words scared her. Take off your clothes. Take off my clothes? Duan Muyu immediately froze. It was true that she had the temperament of a man. Even if she was in the middle of a group of men, she would not flinch or feel uncomfortable at all. However, she was still a woman after all. She had to make up her mind when it came to taking off her clothes. How can we dual cultivate if we don't take off our clothes? Besides, we are husband and wife who have formally bowed to heaven and earth. Now is the time to consummate our marriage. The handsome man looked at her with interest. Duan Muyu did not know how to refute. Seeing that the other party was staring at her with a hint of coldness in his eyes, she immediately understood that after the two disturbances just now, the other party's patience was almost at its limit. After all, Duan Muyu was much more forthright than the average woman. She gritted her teeth and immediately took off her bright red coat, revealing a plain white undergarment. Take it off again. The handsome man urged expressionlessly. Duan Muyu frowned. She could barely see people with her undergarment on, but once it was taken off, she would only be left with her undergarments. This was equivalent to a woman's chastity. Other than the man she had entrusted her life to, no one else could see it. However, there was a spiritual beast in human form in front of her, and Lin-Yi's primordial spirit was hidden in its body. If she took it off, how could she face others? I won't repeat myself, the handsome man said lightly. Duan Muyu did not hesitate for too long. She quickly took off her undergarment. This time, only her undergarments were left to cover her embarrassing parts. However, she did not show any shyness on her face. Instead, she appeared very calm, as if she had thought it through in such a short period of time. Not bad. The handsome man looked up and down Duan Muyu's body with an appreciative gaze. It was not only him. In fact, even Lin-Yi did not miss this scene. He could not help but be secretly speechless. From a purely female point of view, Duan Muyu's figure was actually not perfect. Her bronze-colored skin didn't seem fair enough, and she lacked the gentleness and gracefulness of a woman. However, she had a heroic spirit and tightness that was rare for a woman, which gave her a different kind of charm. Do not look at indecent things. Linny felt that he was suspected of peeping, but he immediately found an excuse for himself. Right now, he needed to pay attention to her every move. Admiring Duan Muyu's body was just a side effect. He had no other choice. Do I look good? Duan Muyu suddenly asked in his mind. Yes. Linny replied subconsciously. Then, he immediately regretted it. Being peeped by a man like him, no matter how carefree Duan Muyu was, she would definitely fall out with him. This was related to a woman's chastity. If you are not a primordial spirit, I will dig out your eyes right now. Although her words were fierce, Duan Muyu's tone was not that agitated. I didn't do it on purpose. Lin Yi was very embarrassed. He had no choice but to change the topic. Business is more important. Business is more important. With Duan Muyu's escape, the atmosphere unconsciously began to become a little charming. The handsome man reached out to touch Duan Muyu's body. Duan Muyu hurriedly took a step back. Don't be afraid. We are husband and wife. We will take this step sooner or later. The handsome man advised with a gentle expression, but I still don't know what you are. Duan Muyu suddenly said, You want to know my true form? The handsome man looked at her meaningfully. Yes. Duan Muyu nodded. In fact, the person who really wanted to ask this question was Lin Yi. She was just a mouthpiece. If she wanted to deal with the handsome man, at the very least, she had to know what the other party's true form was. Chapter 52-58. Duan Muyu looked at him carefully. There was no change at all compared to before. He could not help but be surprised. Are you also a human? Hee, whether I am a human or not, you can feel it yourself. The handsome man smiled noncommittally, walked a step in front of Duan Muyu, stood still, and stretched out his hand. Duan Muyu looked at him suspiciously, and under Lin Yi's instigation, he pinched his arm. Suddenly, the look in his eyes changed. This texture was definitely not human flesh and blood. It felt more like some kind of plant, but he could not think of what it was at the moment. Can't guess? The handsome man's mouth curled up with interest, and his right hand slowly moved to his left forearm. He gently bent it, and then there was a crisp crack. Duan Muyu's eyelids suddenly twitched, and when he saw that the other party had forcibly broken off his entire left forearm, he was even more shocked. What was going on? Duan Muyu wasn't the only one. Even Lin Yi was stunned. He'd seen ruthless people before, but he'd never seen someone this ruthless. It was the first time he'd seen someone so ruthless that he could break his own arm so easily. However, the strange thing was that even though his entire forearm had been torn off, the handsome man did not bleed at all. Upon closer inspection, the forearm was not made of flesh and blood at all. Other than a few holes on the severed part, the rest of the body was completely solid. The most shocking thing was that the broken forearm was still connected to the wound on his body by several thin threads, as if a lotus root was broken and silk was still connected to the wound on his body. Lotus root? Only then did Duan Muyu react. He widened his eyes and looked at the handsome man again. You are a lotus root person? Sort of. To be exact, my original body is a water lily. As for my identity, you also know that I am the guardian of that lord, which is also what they call the water lily guardian. The handsome man said lightly, Water lily guardian. This answer surprised Duan Muyu a little. Water lilies were an extremely quiet and beautiful plant, and could even be called holy. Although this guy in front of him looked gentle and refined most of the time, the violence that would jump out from time to time was deeply rooted in his bones. No matter how he thought about it, it had nothing to do with water lilies. However, Lin Yi came to a sudden realization. Spirit beasts were different from human cultivators. Unless they were gifted, they could only cultivate their clan's innate abilities. Moreover, every innate ability was closely related to their original form. This fellow's original form was actually a water lily. No wonder he could use such a miraculous ability like Moon's reflection. All right, I've asked all I need to ask. Take off your clothes. Dual cultivation needs to be clean and spotless. Let me help you wash your body. After saying that, the handsome man reattached his arm and reached out to grab the last piece of Duan Muyu's underwear. Duan Muyu wasn't so carefree this time. If even her last piece of clothing was torn off, then she would be completely ashamed to see anyone. To be honest, Duan Muyu's strength could not be considered weak, but that depended on who he was compared to. In front of an existence like the Water Lotus Protector, he was not even worth mentioning. His body had just leaned back a little when his hands were already grabbed by the other party. There's no need to hide. I know you're shy, so I'll help you take it off myself this time. The handsome man smiled slightly. His patience had almost worn out, and he didn't want to dawdle with Duan Muyu anymore. He wanted to get straight to the point and directly try dual cultivation. Duan Muyu was shocked, but at this time, she couldn't struggle at all. She could only watch as the other party slowly pulled off her underwear. At this time, she had no other choice but to accept her fate. However, just when Duan Muyu was about to despair, between her and the handsome man, Lin Yi suddenly appeared, and before the other party could react, he directly stuffed his hand into the other party's mouth. This scene happened so suddenly that not only did the handsome man not expect it, but even Duan Muyu, who was mentally prepared, could not react in time. It would have been fine if it was just sudden, but the key was that Lin Yi's speed was too fast. Whether it was escape or surprise attack, he had the absolute initiative. Previously, the brain-eating worm could not do anything to him, and this time, it was the water lotus protector who could not do anything to him. As a dignified protector, the handsome man had never suffered such a great humiliation. Not only was someone sneaking into his mirror world, but now he had a hand stuffed into his mouth. This time, he was so angry that he almost lost his mind. Unfortunately, before he could do anything to fight back, Lin Yi had already taken his hand back. His whole body, along with Duan Muyu behind him, got up and retreated quickly. The handsome man was stunned for a moment, and then he realized that there seemed to be something in his mouth. Unfortunately, before he could reach out to take it, the thing had already exploded, and his whole head was blown up on the spot. He is dead. Duan Muyu looked at the mutilated corpse in front of her, dumbfounded. She thought that today was a narrow escape, and there would be a bloody and bitter battle. She did not expect that Lin Yi would suddenly make a move and directly end the battle. I hope so. Lin Yi looked at the corpse and frowned slightly. Although the sneak attack just now was a plan that he had long thought about, it was actually just a backup option, because the best time to attack was only after this guy really began the dual cultivation. However, in that case, Duan Muyu's innocence would be lost. Chapter 52-59. Especially at this moment, Duan Muyu was wearing underwear, and his hand was completely in contact with her skin. No matter who saw this scene, they would think that it was intentional. This time, even if they jumped into the Yellow River, they would not be able to clear their names. Fortunately, Duan Muyu did not continue to blame him. After getting off from Lin Yi, she did not say anything. She just walked over and picked up the clothes she had just taken off. However, when she found the clothes and looked at them, she suddenly froze. After being affected by the true chi pill firebomb just now, her clothes were tattered and full of holes. How could she wear them? The key was that apart from the clothes she had taken off, she did not bring any other clothes to change into. What should she do next? She could not go out to the trial wearing these underwear. No matter how free and unrestrained she was still a woman. This time, she was forced to be seen by Lin Yi, but if she was seen by others, how could she live? Can't wear it? It's okay. I have it. Lin Yi quickly handed over a set of clothes, which were prepared for other girls in the space of the jade pendant. Last time, he gave it to Hua Yudi to wear, and this time, it came in handy for Duan Muyu. Are these clothes from the secular world? Duan Muyu took the clothes and glanced at them. Without saying anything, she put them on directly. Not to mention, when she put them on, she had the temperament of a strong woman in the city. Lin Yi was still thinking about the mutilated corpse on the ground, but Duan Muyu suddenly said, "You have a lot of women?" Huh. Lin Yi looked at her. Why did she say that for no reason? In addition to these who came with you to the trial, if I'm not wrong, you have other women in other places, right? Duan Muyu said casually. How did you know? Lin Yi was surprised. Because the size of this dress is wrong, and the ones with you don't match. Duan Muyu said firmly. Lin Yi could not help sweating. What kind of eyes did this woman have? She could even see this. This was not in line with her usual manly temperament. You are a playboy. Duan Muyu came to a conclusion and then asked, since you're a primordial spirit, Where did these clothes come from? Just think of it as me. Lin kept them guessing. Duanmuyu nodded and did not continue to ask. She was a sensible person. He knew what to ask and what not to ask. All right, let's get out of here first. Lin called out. He felt a little strange now. Since the water lily protector had been killed by him, why was she still here? Then why didn't this mirror world collapse on the spot? Could it be that this space wasn't maintained by his ability, but was already a solidified space? The two immediately passed through the tent and came out. Fortunately, the situation that Lin was most worried about did not happen. The only exit to the real world was not blocked. Otherwise, he would be at a loss. However, Lin and Duanmuyu were not happy for long. After they passed through it, they realized that something was wrong. There was no exit in the stairway ahead. It was just a facade. Lin Yi's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Another mirror world? It can't be? Duanmuyu still did not believe it. In her opinion, the water lotus protector was clearly dead. It was understandable that the previous mirror world could be left behind. How could there be another mirror world? Moreover, even if it was a mirror world, it did not appear out of thin air. It had to be connected to the real world in order to be reflected. It couldn't be that it was a mirror world just now, and now it was also a mirror world. There was not even a basic prototype, right? Duanmuyu did not believe it and personally climbed the stairway. At first, there was nothing strange, but after climbing about 1,000 feet, no matter how she tried, she could not take another step forward. It was hazy in front of her, and there was always an invisible barrier blocking her. Not only could she not see the situation in front of her at all, but even her divine sense was useless. It was as if she had really reached the end of the world. It's useless. This is the mirror world created by that guy. Limited by its ability, this mirror world can only reflect so much. Otherwise, if it could really expand infinitely and even reflect the entire world, it would not be the water lotus protector, but the legendary god of creation. Lin shook his head. Then what should we do? Duanmuyu was completely confused by this fact. Both were mirror worlds. How could they get out? Don't worry. Since this mirror world was created by looking at a mirror, there must be a place that is connected to the real world. As long as we are careful, we will be able to find the exit. Lin comforted her. Duanmuyu nodded. She was not an ordinary woman. Most of the time, she was much more carefree than most men. It was normal for her to be confused when she encountered such an unimaginable situation, but it was not to the extent that she would lose her composure. The two of them immediately began to explore along the edge of this mirror world. Fortunately, it was only about 10 kilometers in radius, so it did not take long for them to go around it. Otherwise, if this mirror world was really boundless, the two of them would really be at their wits' end. Of course, if that was the case, it was still unknown whether they would be able to discover anything strange so quickly. Perhaps they would even think that this was the real world. Finally, the two of them went around to the tent, looked at each other, and stopped. There's nothing unusual in other places. This is the only place left, Duanmuyu said in a low voice. Well, it seems that this tent is the only entrance to this mirror world. Lin nodded in agreement. With his divine sense, he should not miss any flaws in theory. After all, the level of his body was much higher than this water lotus protector. Even if his strength was limited because of his primordial spirit, it was at most because he had too little primordial spirit. The difference in quality between their primordial spirits could not be changed. In other words, the entrance to the real world should be in the mirror world on the other side? Duanmuyu said without hesitation and immediately walked through the tent. This woman is quite decisive. Seeing this, Lin could not help but laugh. If it were any other woman facing such a situation, even if they did not panic, they would most likely hide behind him. They would not be as bold and decisive as Duanmuyu. Following closely behind Duanmuyu, Lin immediately passed through the tent. At the moment he passed through, he suddenly had a faint feeling. What's wrong? Duanmuyu turned around and asked. Don't you feel a little strange when you pass through? Lin asked with a frown. What's strange? Duanmuyu was confused. She thought about it carefully and said, I don't feel anything different. It's the same as when I just passed through. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.